Hello everyone. We hope you're doing well. We're doing great, and we truly appreciate your ongoing support. We'd like to briefly address some comments regarding our audiobook series. Rest assured, progress is ongoing. That said, your feedback is vital. If there's a novel you particularly enjoy and want to hear more of, please let us know in the comments. Each chapter requires a financial investment, so we can only continue series that receive strong audience interest. Although we retain core names and plot lines, we make significant editorial changes to enhance clarity, pacing, and immersion. These are not simple recitations. We work hard to deliver a polished, thoughtful listening experience. Without sufficient feedback or engagement, we may need to discontinue a series. So if you're enjoying something, don't stay silent. Your input truly matters. Note, our default audio speed is 3x. If that's too fast, let us know. We're happy to adjust it. Interested in early access to unreleased audiobooks? Visit our Patreon. You'll get to experience new content before it reaches YouTube. Just to clarify, I'm a fan like you. I've purchased these novels and adapted them with care, while respecting all rights and guidelines. For updates, follow us on Facebook and Twitter, X. YouTube update: recently, YouTube flagged some of our content for including mature themes, realistic violence, and darker story elements. As a result, we've decided to stop uploading anything that violates YouTube's guidelines. If you'd like access to the full, uncut versions including the more intense or mature content, you can find them on our Patreon page, where we upload everything first. Available now on Patreon: Shattered Innocence transmigrated into a novel as an extra. Transmigrating over 10,000 years late, I was forced to become a mighty presence. I, the celestial dragon, rule the heavens through the double gate, reigning supreme in countless worlds with peace taming, Tower of God sequence strength, cultivation when you take things to the extreme. Naruto is an Uchiha with cyst. WTF, the centuries-old ancestor in our family take concubine again. Plus 18, Ichi, reincarnated in Bleach as a wizard. Thanks for listening and happy listening. Chapter 1, SSS Ranked Talent, Primordial Summoner, Detroit, Michigan, 2045. Come back here, you little thief. The man shouted as he threw his sandals at the running teenager. Hee hee. Arthur chuckled as he held a large baguette in his arms as he ran in between the crowds. The man tried to catch him but failed, so he sighed and headed back to his shop whilst shouting some slurs. These damn little scrubs, he spat, as he headed to his next customer. Can I get one loaf please? Said a middle-aged woman standing in front of the counter. Right away, he replied, as he rubbed his hands together from the freezing cold wind of January. After making sure the man wasn't following him, Arthur walked across different alleyways until he finally arrived at his place. Well, it wasn't really his place. It was the slums of Detroit, filled with swarming rats that were your only friendly neighbors. He kicked one away, as it tried to climb up his body to get to the loaf of bread. TSK. Even rats are hungry these days, he grinded his teeth, as he approached the small fire in front of him. Charlotte. I got us some food for tonight, he whispered as he got close to the frail-looking, pale girl who was lying down next to the fire. Charlotte. He whispered again, as his worry increased. Why is she not replying? Is she getting worse? Apostrophe, he thought as he quickly approached, checking her temperature. Damn it, she is so cold, he thought as he touched her forehead to check. His eyes darted towards the bin next to him, that was housing their fire and spreading its warmth to their small, malnourished bodies. His eyes scanned the surroundings for anything he could use to make the fire burn stronger, faster. That works, he muttered, as he quickly broke a few tree twigs. He quickly ran back to the fire bin and threw the twigs inside, making the flames roar. There we go, that's what I'm talking about, he said as he dusted off his hands. He then walked towards Charlotte and checked if the flame's temperature was reaching her. Not enough, he thought, as he repeated his actions several times. After being satisfied with the temperature, he sat next to Charlotte and sighed. Mom, Dad, he muttered silently, as sadness erupted in his heart. He and Charlotte weren't always in the slums, in fact, they were well off. Charlotte was the adopted daughter of his parents. She was also older than him by 2 years. His parents had unfortunately suffered from a fatal accident that left both of them dead. It has been about a month since he and his sister were kicked out from their own home and left to the slums. I will make him pay. He gritted his teeth, as anger boiled inside of him, remembering the cause of their misery and homelessness. Charlotte winced, as she moved around in her sleep. Charlotte, he whispered, as he saw her open her eyes slowly. Meeting his gaze, she smiled slightly even though she wasn't fully awake. I got us food, let me help you up, he said with a smile on his face. As she leaned on him for support, he tore small pieces of bread and put them in her mouth slowly. Tasty? He whispered as he looked at her. She nodded her head cutely and opened her mouth for the second mouthful. Suddenly, a voice echoed in all parts of the earth, shocking its residents. Earthlings. You have been summoned to participate in the universe's Armageddon. What the Arthur managed to let out before the voice interrupted him again. The Earth is now going to experience changes that will affect everything you have known so far. Armageddon has arrived. The first batch of beta testers are now being issued. Beta testers? Am I hallucinating? Can you hear this, Charlotte? He asked, as he glanced at her next to him. She nodded her head, and with sign language she said, I can hear it too. A total of 10 million spots have been issued at random. This is actually real. He muttered as he looked at her expression. The next sentence shook him to his core. You have been selected. A small ring slowly materialized on his ring finger. What the fuck, Arthur? Shouted as he heard the global announcement. He quickly glanced at his sister's hand but did not find any ring on her hand. He quickly sighed in relief. His expression turned grim as he realized the reality settling in. This is bad, he muttered, as he looked at his sister's worried face. Charlotte looked at him with a worried gaze and used her hands to ask him. What is this ring? Are you one of the beta players? Her face was etched with worry and confusion. He nodded slowly. Yes, I have been chosen as a beta player. I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, he said, as he held her hands. But I assure you, that I will be safe. Okay? He said with a smile on his face, although his heart was beating rapidly. She nodded slowly, as tears started forming in the corner of her eyes. Hey there, don't cry. Those tears are too precious, okay? He comforted her, as he caressed her hair and embraced her frail body. I promise, I will come back, okay? The so-called Armageddon is telling me that I need to enter, he told her, as he glanced at the notification in front of him. Do you wish to enter? Yes or no? 5 seconds counter initiated. 5, 4, 3. Note, not entering the game will lead to significant disadvantages no one can afford. Shit, I need to enter. Now. He thought, as he pressed yes. His body slowly turned into pixels, as he threw the coins he had to his worried sister. Take these. I don't know how long I will stay there, but I will try to come back as soon as possible, okay? Wait for me. He said, as his body finally disintegrated. Where am I? He thought as he stared at the endless black void. Welcome to Armageddon. Soon enough, the scenery changed as a portal appeared in the middle of the black void. After waiting for a while, he realized that nothing was happening, so he decided to enter. I better not be digging my own grave, he muttered grimly, as he entered the portal. Wow, he marveled, as he looked down. He was standing on a cloud, and the sky was bright blue, making it seem like a dream world. So soft, he thought, as he stepped on the cloud that felt better than cotton on his bare foot. Would you like to register? Yes or no? A holographic screen appeared in front of him. Arthur pressed yes. It was too late to back out now, especially after seeing all of these magical things. Identity registered. Arthur Fate, enter your ID. Note, this will be the nickname that others will identify you as. It cannot be changed once set. Think carefully. Arthur read the note silently. After scoffing, he paid it no heed and entered his ID. ID available. Welcome. Fateless. It was quite ironic that his last name was Fate, since all he had experienced in the past month was nothing but suffering and lack of direction. Teleportation initiated. You will be teleported in 3.2.1. Arthur's gaze squirmed around as he took in the scenery. Mountain? He was on the peak of a mountain, with the clouds right below him. Wow, we are so high up. One of the players around shouted. Arg. I'm scared of heights. Mommy, save me. A middle-aged man said. Come here, son, Mommy is here to protect you. A woman next to him said as she hugged him tightly. Arthur looked at the role-playing couple with disgust. He spat on the floor, muttering. These people think this is a joke. Glancing around, the mountain peak slowly started filling up with new players as they spawned rapidly. Arthur glanced at the man who was in front of him, standing in the air with his eyes closed and his arms folded in front of him. After a period of time, the man opened his eyes. He looked around and nodded his head. All right, since everyone is here, it's time to start. Let me make something clear. No one is allowed to interrupt me as I speak, no matter the reason. Otherwise, the consequences will be something you cannot afford. He said, his gaze sharp enough to cut through their heads. There are a few reasons why you have been transported here, the first being is the explanation of the rules to you. The first rule, you are able to spend 12 hours inside the game for every 24 hours in your real world. The time can be allocated at your disposal. You can also exit and enter this world at will. The second rule, the ratio of game time to Earth time is 2:1. This means that for every 2 hours you spend here, 1 hour would have passed in your world. Simple, right? He added, with a smile on his face that seemed to contain some sort of amusement. The third rule, the game currency is connected to your reality. This means you will be able to exchange your world's currency with this world's one and vice versa. The transaction is completed through the cosmic bank, so no scamming will occur. These are the rules you need to know. For now at least. He said as a smirk tugged at the corner of his lips. Arthur, who was in the crowd, looked at the smirk and felt a shiver run down his spine. He is hiding something important. This man isn't an ally. No way. He thought as he looked around at the people who seemed to admire the man flying in the air. With the boring stuff out of the way, it's time for the real deal. Saying, status, should allow you to see your personal information that only you will view. You can either say it out loud or think about it in your mind. The choice is yours. Arthur looked around after making sure there was nothing wrong with what the man was saying. He muttered, status. Race, human, ID, fateless, level, 1, class, none, talent, unawakened, health points, 50, mana points, 90, magical damage, 9, physical damage, 2, damage resistance, 5, attributes, strength 2, agility 5, vitality 5, intelligence 9, skills, none, attribute points, 0, skill points, 0, equipment, none. In front of you should be a holographic screen that provides you information. I will quickly go over this information. Attributes are straightforward and don't need explaining except for intelligence. Intelligence is the metric for mana and magic. It's very important for every class in this world. Classes are the profession you will choose to become later on. It could be a mage, assassin, warrior and so on. Next, the race is straightforward. Health points and mana points. They are calculated by multiplying your attributes by 10. As you can tell, intelligence correlates with mana points, and vitality correlates with health points. Damage and resistance directly correlate with your attributes. He quickly brushed over the damage, since it didn't need a genius to figure it out. Next, we have skills and skill points. Skills can be obtained through either loot, quests or other methods you can discover by yourself later on. Skill points are earned through leveling up, quests and some other unconventional methods. Next, levels. You can level up by either completing quests, killing, and so on. It's obvious when leveling up, you will earn attribute points which you can use to increase a specific attribute of your choice. Last but not least. Talent. Some of you might be wondering why it says unawakened. Well, it's because you're unawakened. Don't be stupid. He added in a sarcastic manner. Talents are what differentiates the weak from the strong. The higher your talent, the more you will soar, leaving everyone behind. Talents are split into ranks, ranging from F to SS rank. Now that you understand the general idea, it's time to let you know where you are. You are in the Kingdom of Mira, more specifically in village number 420. I see, you are a man of culture. Do you smoke weed? A down player said with his mouth dripping with saliva. The man's face remained expressionless, as he flicked his finger. Click. Blood spluttered across the players who were around the special player, looking at the mist of blood where the player was. Female players started screaming due to the gory scene. The man's face remained impassive to all the noise, his facial expressions patient. Yo, you killed him. He was clearly special. Why did you do that? A man with a righteous face said as he pointed his finger at him. Arthur shook his head. Idiot, you got yourself killed. He muttered silently, as he watched the man turn into paste as the same scene repeated itself. The players, learning from the mistakes of their companions, shut up immediately, not daring to let out a fart. Afraid of bringing the attention of the demon in front of them. Now that this is done, let me say a few things. I have just punished your fellow humans, I haven't killed them. They will only be punished for not entering the game for 24 hours. They will soon respawn, so relax. The players sighed in relief, as their tension lowered hearing his words. Arthur scoffed silently. You didn't kill them. You basically signed off their death penalty. He thought as he glanced at the man's smile. He wasn't naive enough to believe that death in this world wouldn't have consequences. Let alone not entering for 24 hours, dying itself probably had its own complications and hidden penalties that the man in front of them did not share. He had learned a lot of things about human nature, for the past month or so. He had slowly understood how humans acted, and their reasonings. The man in front of them was clearly someone dangerous, and not to be fully trusted, although he was bound by the game's rules. Now, time to continue before I was rudely interrupted. Village number 420, there are many other villages like yours, so you aren't the first nor the last. You are currently at the peak of the mountain of village number 420. The man said, his tone casual. There must be something important about this place, for it to be mentioned. Arthur thought as he took a mental note. These villages are the starting point for all players, this is where it will all begin. Finally, it's time for the awakening ceremony. The man said as he waved his hands, Crystals flew out of his hand and flew towards the players standing on the mountain peak. "Just think about it, and it will activate," he said. Arthur glanced at the crystal in his hand as he muttered. "Awaken. Talent awakening, system. Error, retrying. Error." After countless attempts of awakening, Arthur's forehead was filled with sweat. "What the hell is going on? Do I not have a talent?" he thought, as fear slowly crept in. Final attempt, awakening. Unique SSS rank talent, Primordial Summoner, Chapter 2, Primordial Summoner. The players started awakening their talents, and loud exclamations resounded across the whole mountain. "I got a C rank talent. Is that bad? Am I cooked, chat?" said a teenager with broccoli hair. "You got a C rank talent and you are cooked? Then what am I?" "Burned?" said a man with an E rank talent. The man flying looked at the young man who spoke and said to him, "A C rank talent, you are what we call a survivor. You aren't special, nor are you weak. You are just there. Existing," he said, with a smile on his face. The teenager with the C rank talent initially was just looking for some attention, but his face paled after hearing what the man said. The real talents start from B rank. This is where you can start to make a difference. There is 1 in 100,000 chances that one is born with a B rank talent and 1 in a million to be born with an A rank talent. SS rank is an exception, as only one person per race can have it. If anyone in your batch has a B rank, then you are considered a good batch. Especially since you are from Earth. Now that the awakening ceremony has been done, you will soon be transported to the village. "See you another time," he grinned, as they were all teleported away. Arthur teleported with everyone else to the village. He was still shocked by the reveal of his talent. He paid no heed to his surroundings, as he knew that he was teleported to a safe zone. His main focus was the holographic screen in front of him. SSS rank talent, Primordial Summoner talent. Effect number 1, you are able to summon primordial beasts once every 2 months. Additionally, you can summon normal beasts at will, though these beasts are random. Your summoned beasts level up with you. Talent effect number 2, you are able to extract one talent or skill from your beast, and keep it as your own. Talent effect number 3, you are able to summon any beast you have killed as your own summon. Talent effect number 4, level up to unlock. Note, the amount of summons level. Level 1 summons 1 summon, what the fuck? This is so overpowered. Arthur almost jumped up in joy when he read it, but alas, there was a crowd around him. After reading through his talent effects countless times, his heartbeats finally returned to a normal rhythm. Looking at the village around him, it looked like a small village from the medieval era. There were many players around that were trying to find hidden missions, but they all failed miserably. "Hey, beauty. My name is Sigma, do you need any help?" a player asked a female NPC, with a smug look on his face. The female NPC glanced at him in disgust and continued to do her work. "Come on, beauty, I know you like that chiseled jawline," he said as he pointed at the sharp edge of his boxy head. What an idiot, she is clearly not interested. He is the type of guy to keep begging his ex to go back together. Arthur muttered as he glanced at him in disgust. He decided to ignore the players around him. Every minute counts in this place. He had to take advantage of his talent. He needed to come back to inform Charlotte too. Newbie pack gifted, wooden sword, common. After checking it out, it was just a normal wooden sword. There was nothing special about it. He placed it back in his inventory and started exploring. In these types of games, the hidden quests are always with the old men. If I can find one, I can test this theory out, he thought as he looked for a mysterious-looking old man. Soon he found one, a drunk old man at the side of a small house. "Hey old man, do you need any help?" Arthur asked as he glanced at the old man. "SHH, go away from here. I don't need any help," he said, as he shooed him away with his hands. "Are you sure?" he asked a final time to check. Yes. I'm so," he hiccuped mid-sentence. Arthur shrugged his shoulders, as he turned around and started exploring the village. The village wasn't big by any means. He could see some forest surrounding the village with his naked eye. This is probably the danger zone. This is where everyone is farming for levels right now, he thought as he noted down the surrounding area. Arthur decided that he was done checking the village. There were all kinds of shops. There were potions shops, which restored your health points and mana points. There were blacksmiths, there were merchants, and everything you would expect in a game was there. Arthur then pressed the log out button. He needed to reassure Charlotte first. After logging out, Arthur felt the same void tearing as before. Instantly appearing in the same spot he was before, he shocked Charlotte, who got jolted up from his sudden appearance. "Sorry to scare you, I just wanted to let you know that I'm fine. The game isn't as serious, so you don't have to worry about me. If someone dies in the game they respawn, so nothing is dangerous. I need to get back to the world, as every minute that passes makes me behind." Charlotte nodded, her face much more relaxed than before. After thanking Arthur for reassuring her, she waved him goodbye. "See you," he said, as he teleported back into the world. "Time to summon a bad boy," Arthur muttered silently, as he found a secluded area with no players. "Arise," he said. Slowly but surely. Nothing happened. What the hell? Why are they not being summoned? He muttered in frustration. After checking his talent out, it seemed that he needed to set a word for the summoning. "Rise and shine?" "No, I am not waking up." "Arise?" "Nah, that's too cliché." "Awaken." "That's it." Arthur nodded, proud of his naming. "Word chosen, awaken, let's try again," Arthur muttered, as he took a deep breath preparing for the summoning of a primordial, ancient and powerful beast. "Awaken!" Arthur shouted in an excited tone. This was his ticket to the top after all. A portal appeared from the floor. It looked incredibly menacing and powerful. Energy crackled in anticipation of the awakening. First summon detected. A primordial beast had been summoned. "Oh yeah boy, I summoned something powerful," Arthur excitedly said as he waited for the beast to appear. Soon enough, a creature appeared. Looking at the creature in front of him, Arthur's face turned gloomy. "WTF, is this a glitch in this shitty world?" he said as he glanced at the creature in front of him. Chapter 3, First Summon is a cat. "I summoned a damn cat," he shouted, looking at the cute, chubby-looking white cat in front of him. The cat was licking its paws as if it had no care in the world for Arthur's presence. "Calm down, this cat must be special. It must be," he muttered, as he opened its status. Race, Primordial Felidae, ID, Mankey Neko, Level 1, Talent, Lucky, SSS, Health Points, 40, Mana Points, 150, Magical Damage, 15, Physical Damage, 10, Damage Resistance, 4, Attributes, Strength 10, Agility 10, Vitality 4, Intelligence 15, Skills, Claw Slash, Rare, Paw Steps, Rare, Attribute Points, 0, Skill Points, 0, Talent Effect Number 1, Luck, Near Infinite. Note, this talent has only one effect, huh? Arthur exclaimed as he looked at the talent's only effect. "This game must be bugged," he said with an excited tone. "Hey, I ain't complaining." He chuckled as he tried to catch the small cat. "Come here, let me pet you." "My lucky star," he chuckled as he tried to grab the cat. "Eh?" he said, as the cat bounced from its spot and avoided his hug. "We are playing a game now, huh?" he said, as a grin started forming on his face. 15 minutes later. "What the hell, this cat is basically untouchable." He slowly exhaled, as his hands rested on his knees. "Fine, you can run all you want." He glared at the cat that was casually cleaning itself. "Can you talk?" "Okay." Arthur shrugged, not caring about it for now. "Extract," he said, as he looked at his summon with a smile. "Please pick the skill or talent you would like to extract." "Talent, Lucky SSS." Arthur pressed on the holographic screen. Extraction completed. "Talent, Lucky SSS has been extracted." "Race, Human, ID, Fateless, Level 1, Class, None, Talent, Primordial Summoner, SSS, Lucky, SSS, Health Points, 50, Mana Points, 90, Magical Damage, 9, Physical Damage, 2, Damage Resistance, 5, Attributes, Strength 2, Agility 5, Vitality 5, Intelligence 9, Skills, none, Attribute Points, 0, Skill Points, 0, Equipment, Wooden Sword, Common, Time to level up. Arthur thought as he started heading towards one of the village's gates. There was a gate in each direction, south, east, west and north. Arthur picked the closest gate to him, the northern gate. It's the furthest away from the shop, so there should be fewer players there anyway. Arthur chose the gate with the lowest amount of players possible. He had picked up on what the flying man said. You can level up by killing. Killing. He didn't specify whether it was monsters or players. He thought. I'm sure I'm not the only one who realized this. Arriving at the northern gate, Arthur stepped out whilst making sure his surroundings were safe. You have left the safe zone. You can now be attacked by monsters. Players cannot attack each other yet. Attacking another player will result in major penalties. Be warned, seems like I was too paranoid. Arthur thought as he read the notifications after stepping back into the village again to be on the safe side. Leaving the village again, the same notification rang out again. Ignoring it, Arthur headed inside the forest carefully with the wooden sword in his hand and his summon following him casually. Glancing behind his back, he looked at the cat that was walking casually. This damn cat, so lazy. But I will allow it, it gave me an op talent after all. As he looked around, he saw a group of players attacking a small pack of evolved beetles. John, attack from the back. Paul, use your shield to take the aggression. I will make sure you support John. said George, as he attacked the beetles. Impressed by their coordination, Arthur remained at a distance. After watching them for a few seconds, he left the area and decided to find another area. Soon he spotted a little rabbit. Corroded rabbit, level 1, health points, 30, physical damage, 3, details, a normal rabbit, that was corroded by the energy that invaded the world, huh? Arthur muttered silently, as he looked at the details of the rabbit in front of him. It had blood-red-shot eyes, fangs that were unnaturally large and teeth that stuck out of its mouth like spikes. Neko. Go attack him. He tried to reason with the cat, which was lazing around on his shoulders. The cat looked at him dead in the eyes for a second. Then went back to licking its paws. Damn it, you are even making fun of your summoner. He cursed silently, making sure he didn't alert the rabbit. Glancing back at the spot the rabbit was at, he didn't find it. Shit. Where is it? He cursed silently, as his eyes darted around like an eagle. Immediately turning his head to the rustling of a bush next to him, he put the wooden sword in front of him as he prepared for what was to come. Grr. The rabbit growled as it bounced on him, its fangs sharp. Damn it. He quickly parried the attack with a wooden sword. -1 health point. What? I just parried the attack, why am I taking damage? His hand was still shaking from the force of the attack. I need to kill this damn rabbit. Arthur steadied his stance, gripping the wooden sword tightly. His eyes were fixed on the corrupted rabbit, its bloodshot eyes glinting with a feral hunger. The creature's fangs gleamed under the faint light filtering through the trees, sharp and ready for another lunge. His heart thudded in his chest as he felt the adrenaline surge, sharpening his senses. The rabbit growled, a guttural, unsettling sound coming from such a small creature. Without warning, it sprang forward, claws extended and teeth bared. Arthur swung his sword to intercept it, managing a glancing blow. -2 health point. He winced, feeling the sting radiate up his arm despite the successful parry. What the hell kind of rabbit is this? He muttered, his eyes narrowed in concentration. The rabbit didn't even flinch at the blow, bouncing back with an eerie agility, readying itself for another attack. Meanwhile, Neko, his supposed primordial summoning that was meant to carry him, sat a few feet away, comfortably licking its paws, completely disinterested in Arthur's struggle. The cat's indifferent attitude only fueled Arthur's determination to finish the battle quickly. Fine, I'll do it myself, Arthur grunted, rolling his shoulders and adjusting his grip. Chapter 4, First Kill. The rabbit charged again, a blur of fangs and claws. This time, Arthur sidestepped, narrowly avoiding its fangs as he brought his sword down in a swift arc. The wooden blade cracked against the rabbit's side, sending it skidding a few feet back. -5 health point. Grr. The rabbit growled in pain. The rabbit shook itself, crimson eyes glaring at him with newfound fury. It was as if the creature had only grown angrier from the hit. Come on, then. Arthur shouted, trying to rile it up further. He adjusted his stance, knees bent, ready for whatever it was planning on doing next. The rabbit suddenly crouched, muscles tensing as it coiled up, preparing for something big. Arthur's eyes widened. Damn it, he is actually pulling a power-up mid-fight, and I can't do anything about it, he muttered, quickly taking a defensive stance, but the rabbit was faster than he anticipated. In a split second, it launched itself forward, its fangs aimed straight at his arm. Arthur twisted his body, barely dodging its fangs, but the rabbit managed to scrape its claws across his shoulder. -3 health point. He hissed in pain, feeling the warm trickle of blood seeping through his shirt. Damn it. He growled, gritting his teeth as he took a step back to reassess. Alright, you want a fight to the death? You got one. Arthur took a deep breath, steadying his heartbeat and blocking out a pain. He noticed a rhythm to the rabbit's attacks, a slight pause before each lunge. Timing is key here, he thought as he watched every step of the rabbit. Just as the rabbit readied itself to attack again, Arthur braced himself. It leapt, claws extended. This time, he was ready. In one swift motion, he sidestepped and swung his sword with all his strength. The wooden blade struck the creature right on its exposed flank, landing a solid hit that knocked it off balance. -7 health point. The rabbit tumbled to the ground, struggling to right itself. Seeing his chance, Arthur didn't hesitate. He dashed forward, raising his weapon high and bringing it down on the rabbit's head with a loud crack. The creature let out a shrill squeal as it thrashed in pain. Still, it wasn't done yet. With a final burst of energy, the rabbit pushed itself up, blood dripping from its injuries, but its eyes still burned with a relentless fury. Arthur, breathing heavily, held his stance, refusing to let it intimidate him. His entire body was buzzing with the thrill of the fight, his own bloodlust ignited by the creature's tenacity. You're one tough rabbit, I'll give you that, he said, wiping sweat from his brow. But this ends now. The rabbit lunged one last time, and Arthur responded in kind, his sword meeting the creature's charge head-on. The impact of the blow reverberated through his arms as he pushed forward, channeling every ounce of his remaining strength into the strike. With a final, desperate shriek, the rabbit fell silent, its body lying still on the forest floor. "You have slain a corroded rabbit." Loot dropped on the floor next to the rabbit, but Arthur ignored it for now. Arthur let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding, feeling the exhaustion set in. He glanced down at his trembling hands, still gripping the wooden sword tightly, his knuckles white. "Not bad for a beginner," he muttered, managing a weary smile. A faint sound drew his attention. He looked over to see Neko, still lounging on a tree stump, licking its paws and gazing at him with an unreadable expression. "You didn't help at all, you know that?" Arthur called out, shaking his head in disbelief. The cat simply blinked, unbothered, before returning to cleaning itself. Unbelievable. He couldn't help but laugh, his adrenaline slowly fading. "All right, then," he said, rolling his shoulders and sheathing his weapon. "This is only the beginning, I will continue to become stronger." Looking at the loot on the floor, he showed a shocked expression. "An uncommon item, isn't that meant to be pretty rare for a village?" "Stone sword, uncommon, has been dropped." Picking it up, he threw the wooden sword in his hand and spat at it. "Beauty. Useless sword." He stored the new sword in his inventory and rested for a while to wait for his health points to rise up to max again. As he left combat mode, his health points started recovering rapidly. After his health recovered, he got up and headed for the next prey. His thoughts were focused on what he could have done better in the fight. After some more searching, he found another rabbit. "Lock in," he commanded himself, as his eyes scanned every motion of the rabbit. He remained motionless, as he watched the rabbit like a predator. As the rabbit got closer, Arthur stabbed his sword forward. The rabbit had a sharp instinct. Although it was in close range, it still managed to avoid the lethal stab, albeit not fully. The sword penetrated the side of the rabbit, leaving a huge hole near its kidney. 25 health point, that's a critical hit. Arthur got excited, as he sprung forward, finishing off the injured rabbit. "You have slain a corroded rabbit. Backpack, uncommon, has been dropped." Backpack, uncommon, able to hold 5 items inside, another uncommon item. Arthur questioned before his gaze darted towards the lazy cat in front of him. "This talent is gonna make Dot rich." Arthur grinned at the thought of dropping the best loot in the game. Time to farm. 30 minutes later. "Ding, you have leveled up to level 2, all attribute points will be increased by 1, you have gained 1 free attribute point and 1 skill point." It took him a very long to find more solo monsters, most of them were in groups like the beetles, so Arthur did not dare attack them without any skill. "I need to get a magical skill, I'm wasting my potential by using physical damage." He sighed, as he realized that he is probably much behind talents that have offensive capabilities. "Why can I not command this damn cat? It's quite strong for a level 1. He thought as he glanced back at the cat. Chapter 5, The Farming Result. Race, Human, ID, Fateless, Level, 2, Class, None, Talent, Primordial Summoner, SSS, Lucky, SSS, Summons, 1 out of 2, Health Points, 60, Mana Points, 100, Magical Damage, 10, Physical Damage, 3, Damage Resistance, 6, Attributes, Strength 3, Agility 6, Vitality 6, Intelligence 10, Skills, none, Attribute Points, 1, Skill Points, 1, Equipment, Stone Sword, uncommon, Backpack, uncommon, Backpack, uncommon, not bad. Arthur looked at his status and nodded in approval. He had gained 2 backpacks, he stored all the uncommon items he had gained from the killings inside of them. Time to summon someone who's useful. He was able to summon again since his level increased. "I can summon 1 more awaken," he muttered, as another portal slowly appeared. He knew that he would not get another primordial beast, since it was on cooldown. "Let's hope this beast is obedient." The portal started closing down, as something flew out of the portal. "Fast," Arthur muttered, as he glanced at the sky. "It's a hawk!" Arthur exclaimed in excitement. The hawk slowly descended after doing some laps in the air. Slowly, it descended on his shoulder and started rubbing its face across his. "There we go, that's what I'm talking about." He laughed, as he petted its head. "You are an affectionate one, aren't you?" He chuckled after he stopped petting its head. Race, Hawk, ID, Hang, Level, 2, Talent, Scout, C rank, Health points, 50, Mana points, 60, Magical damage, 6, Physical damage, 5, Damage resistance, 5, Attributes, Strength 5, Agility 5, Vitality 5, Intelligence 6, Skills, Claw Grab, Uncommon, Attribute points, 0, Skill points, 0, nice, he has a C rank talent. This scout talent will be helpful for scouting the village, helps me avoid danger. Damn that cat, he is talented, He has double to triple the attributes of Hank. Unfortunately, he is arrogant. TSK. Arthur thought. He tried to extract Hank's talent for scouting, but it was on cooldown. Ding. Extraction failed. I have to wait a whole week? Arthur muttered as he glanced at the cooldown. I guess I will just have to try every day. He shrugged and decided not to worry about it. Time to strike it rich. Arthur's grin widened as he headed to the village to sell the items he had received. In the novice village, he went to the spawn area and quickly put a rug on the floor and started selling uncommon level items at the cheapest price possible. Arthur shouted as he looked right and left. Soon, a small crowd started forming in front of Arthur. Hey, handsome. Can you give me this sword? A woman who seemed familiar asked in a seductive manner. Sure, pay up first. The cost is only 5 silver coins. He said, his expression unreadable. I don't have silver coins, but I can pay with something else. She winked at him. With disgust etched in his face, he said. No thanks, I'm not interested in a furry. Plus, aren't you the woman that was called mommy earlier? Don't you have a husband? Her face quickly flushed, as people started chuckling. Watch your back, Humphrey. She snorted and left with her tail between her legs. Can I buy the helmet uncommon? A middle-aged man asked, as he sent him a purchase request. Wiseman69 would like to trade, yes or no? Arthur pressed, yes. Wiseman69 deposited 3 silver coins, Fateless deposited helmet, uncommon, proceed? Thank you for business, Arthur said with a smile, as he gained the 3 silver coins. Seeing someone buy it, the others started flooding in and soon he sold all the items. I'm rich, Arthur thought, 15 silver coins and 34 bronze coins. That's around $1,534. He thought as he walked back to the forest. Hank, who was in the air a whole time, descended as Arthur entered the forest. You have left the safe zone, you can now be attacked by monsters. Looking behind him quickly, he found no one. I could have sworn I felt something move, Arthur muttered out loud. I'm thinking too much. He kept his gaze on the spot for a few seconds, then shrugged and kept moving. As he arrived a good distance away from the village, he spotted a strong monster. Corroded wild boar, level 3 health points, 70 physical damage, 15 details, a wild boar that was corroded by the energy that invaded the world. Spotting the boar, Arthur grinned. Arthur quickly whispered softly to Hank, understood? The hawk gave a light shriek in acknowledgement, his sharp eyes glinting with understanding. Arthur watched as Hank took flight. He quickly climbed a tree nearby smoothly, his gaze shifting toward a faint rustle in a bush just a few meters away. They think they're so clever and hidden, he thought, barely suppressing a smirk. Hank swooped down in a rapid dive, targeting the massive, snarling corroded wild boar that was lying down, sleeping. With swift precision, Hank's talons raked across the boar's hide. -6 health point. The wild boar woke up, roaring up in fury, its red-rimmed eyes narrowing as it fixated on Hank, who hovered just out of reach. Without hesitation, the enraged boar charged, its tusks glinting as it thundered toward the hawk. Hank, however, was faster, gliding up and away just as the boar lunged. Instead of retreating fully, Hank angled his flight path directly over the player's hiding spot, his shadow flashing across their faces as they watched, eyes wide with growing horror. The boar, caught up in its rage, stormed forward, crashing through the dense underbrush, and straight into the player's ill-prepared ambush. One of them yelped as the boar barreled through, its massive weight crushing his leg on impact. -10 health point, -15 health point, -12 health point. Damn it. We're so unlucky. One of the players spat, trying to scramble back, but the boar lunged again, sending him flying. Up in the tree, Arthur chuckled softly, his fingers curled around a low-hanging branch as he watched the chaos unfold below. Think you can sneak up on me, huh? He muttered, shaking his head. Hank, I didn't expect your scout talent to be this useful so soon. This is working perfectly. Flashback pod. The faintest sound of movement had alerted Arthur as he strolled through the forest, seemingly alone. He had acted casual, appearing oblivious, but in truth, he was already piecing together a plan. Leaning close to Hank, he whispered his suspicions, and Hank's scout talent had quickly confirmed that 3 players were trailing him, moving stealthily through the trees. They must have thought they were undetected, and that he was unaware of their presence. But Arthur's mind was already calculating his next move. If they were sneaking up like this, they clearly didn't have friendly intentions. He thought. So, he'd instructed Hank to scout for a suitable monster, ideally one of a higher level that could put up a fight. They probably assumed he was wandering aimlessly, but Arthur had been leading them steadily away from the safety of the village. Once he found the right spot, he'd set his trap. And flashback from his vantage point, Arthur observed the player's panicked struggle. None of them seemed remotely prepared to handle the boar's sheer strength or its relentless rage. As the beast struck again, one of the players let out a piercing scream, crumpling to the ground as his health points plunged. Two of them were down now, their bodies already beginning to dissolve into particles, leaving the remaining player desperately dodging the boar's assaults, his face pale with terror. "No, no. Save me!" he screamed, stumbling backwards until his foot caught on an exposed root. He hit the ground hard, his face twisted in fear as he tried to push himself up, but it was too late. The boar lowered its head, tusks gleaming as it charged one last time. The player's scream cut off abruptly as the boar's tusks met their mark. His body glowed briefly before disintegrating, leaving nothing but a faint shimmer in the air. Arthur leaned back against the tree trunk, letting out a satisfied chuckle. "If I can't attack you myself, I'll just have the monsters do it for me," he muttered, watching as the boar, now calmer, snorted and ambled off deeper into the forest. He couldn't attack them because of the rule that players couldn't attack each other yet. It made him confused as to why they followed him. "They can't even attack me anyway, what's the point?" He thought for a few seconds but quickly decided to put the thought away for the time being. He studied the clearing, confirming there were no other threats. He hadn't recognized the players, but he had a hunch about their motives. "Probably got greedy after seeing me make all that money," he mused in the end. "But to think they'd be dumb enough to try and stalk me instead of just farming themselves." Arthur jumped down from the tree, landing softly on the forest floor with the cat on his shoulders. He glanced at Hank, who had returned to his shoulder, preening with pride. "You did well, Hank," he praised, scratching the hawk's head lightly. "Now, let's finish this boar," he smirked, as he looked at the injured wild boar. Chapter 6, She is sick. Hank shrieked in understanding as he remained in the air, waiting for Arthur's instructions. The corroded wild boar turned, its bloodshot eyes wild with fury as it locked onto Arthur since he was the only one left. The beast pawed at the ground preparing to charge at Arthur. Arthur did not flinch, gripping his stone sword with both hands. "Come on then," he shouted with a smirk, bracing himself for the impact. The boar charged, its tusks shimmering with raw and destructive force. Right before hitting him, Arthur sidestepped, twisting his body as he swung his sword down hard. -8 health point. The beast roared in anger, skidding to a stop as it swung around to face him once more. Before it could react, Hank swooped in from above, diving down and landing another raking blow with his talons. -6 health point. "Good job, Hank, that's what I'm talking about," Arthur shouted, with a smile creeping on his face. The boar reared, its attention snapping to Hank, who was already back in the air, circling just out of reach. Seizing the chance, Arthur darted in, his sword aimed at the creature's exposed side. He landed another solid hit before leaping back, keeping a safe distance. -7 health point. This was their strategy, relentless, hit-and-run tactics. They took turns baiting the boar, drawing its aggression and then retreating just as it lunged, keeping the creature off balance. The boar snorted furiously, its frustration evident as it whirled between the two, unable to settle on a target. Every time it set its sights on one, the other struck from a different angle, keeping the creature in a perpetual state of confusion. Arthur ducked low as the boar charged past him, narrowly avoiding its tusks. He swung his sword in a quick arc, scoring another hit on its neck. -9 health point. The boar let out a bellow, swinging its head toward Arthur, but before it could move, Hank dove down again, clawing at its eyes. Blinded by rage and pain, the boar let out a frenzied roar, shaking its head as it tried to shake off the hawk's attack. "You're doing great, Hank. Keep it up." Arthur called, his voice breathless but exhilarated. The boar was slowing down, its movements growing sluggish with each strike. With one final, coordinated attack, Arthur and Hank attacked together. Hank struck first, his talons raking across the boar's snout, distracting it as Arthur moved in from the side, delivering a powerful, finishing blow directly to its neck. The boar let out a final groan, stumbling as its legs gave out beneath it. With a heavy thud, it collapsed onto the forest floor, its body dissolving slowly into particles as it died. "You have slain a corroded wild boar, well done, Hank." He stroked its feathers. "Leather boots, uncommon, has been dropped. Nice, that's a new item," Arthur exclaimed, as he quickly put it on. "Time to farm," he smiled, as he went to the area with level 2 to 3 monsters. "Hank, attack him, now!" Arthur shouted as he charged in at the last monster. Hank shrieked as he swooped in, diving down towards the final beetle alive. 9 health point. "You have slain a corroded beetle, backpack uncommon has been dropped." The cat was still as lazy as before. Arthur had given up on trying to make it fight for him. "It's to be expected, he is a primordial beast after all, but I will subdue him one day," he thought, as he gave the cat one final look. "Hank, scout the area ahead, we need to head back to the village." Hank immediately flew from his shoulder and remained in the air looking for any potential danger. Soon, Arthur arrived at the village. He decided to sell some duplicates he had again before logging out. He had been in the game for quite a long. He worried that maybe something happened to his sister since she had been quite sick before. After selling the items again, he gained another 25 silver coins and 69 bronze coins. I'm actually rich, Arthur thought in excitement, as he glanced at his balance. He had 41 silver coins and 3 bronze coins. I made over $4,100 in a few hours. This Armageddon is a blessing, he muttered, before explaining to Hank he had to leave. He didn't bother to explain anything to the cat. It was never listening and it probably didn't care anyway. Arthur blinked as the world faded away, the scent of garbage in the air overwhelming alongside the shouts of crackheads bringing him back to reality. He was back in a small, secluded alleyway where he and Charlotte had been staying for the past month. He turned to his right to check up on Charlotte, and his heart sank from what he saw. Charlotte was curled up in a fetal position, on the thing-worn blanket, her body shivering uncontrollably. Her face was pale, and her breath was so faint he almost couldn't see it. "Charlotte," he murmured, kneeling beside her immediately, his hand going straight to her forehead. "She is ice cold. What have I done? This is serious," he thought, feeling a swell of panic in his chest. He grabbed her and pulled her closer to the small fire he'd managed to build earlier from the tree scraps. "This isn't enough. I need to get her to the hospital. Fast." His mind raced. Just before leaving the game world, he'd earned some silver coins. Maybe, just maybe, it would be enough. Quickly, he opened the system's interface and selected the exchange option, watching as 20 silver coins drained from his balance. Ding. $2,000 has been transferred to your bank account. Your current balance is $2,000.05. Relief filled him, but when he glanced back at Charlotte, worry tightened his chest all over again. Her condition hadn't improved, and time was running out. "I can't just sit here. I have to get her to the hospital now." Without a second thought, he wrapped her tightly in the worn-out, dirty blanket and lifted her onto his back, her small body feeling far too light. Was she always this light? He thought, but shook it off. She was clearly sick. How did I let it get this bad? He thought, guilt gnawing at him. But he shook it off. Right now, he had to focus on getting her the help she needed. He made his way out of the alleyway, walking through the narrow roads with his sister on his back until he reached the main road. Cars and people were rushing by, their faces worried and focused, wrapped up in their own problems. Arthur tried waving down someone to help, but the few people he managed to catch the attention of just kept walking, earbuds or headphones blocking out his pleas. "Someone, help me," he called out, his voice hoarse from all the calling. But no one stopped. Everyone was in a hurry, driven by fear or urgency in this chaotic world. This made his problem worse, especially since the Armageddon had descended. Everyone seemed to look out for themselves. Damn it, he thought, panic rising as each passing second felt like a lifetime. No one cares enough to help a kid in times like this. Just as hope was slipping away, a middle-aged woman approached, her kind eyes softening as she saw the desperation on his face. "What's wrong, son?" she asked gently, her tone warm and comforting. Arthur's hope surged as he said, "I need to get my sister to a hospital, she's really sick. Can you call an ambulance?" "Yes, of course," she said without hesitation, pulling out her phone. Within moments, she was on the line, explaining the situation as Arthur held Charlotte close, her breaths barely audible. The woman placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "It's going to be okay," she assured him. 20 minutes later, the wail of an ambulance pierced the night as it arrived. Paramedics rushed over, lifting Charlotte carefully onto a stretcher and loading her into the back of the vehicle. Arthur turned back to the woman, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you," he said, his voice calm. "I'll repay you for this one day, I promise." "Don't worry about that, dear," she replied, giving him a gentle smile. "Just make sure she gets better." He memorized her face, determined to remember the only person who had stopped to help. As the ambulance doors closed, he whispered, "If fate allows, I'll repay you. I swear it." The woman gave him a wave as the doors shut, her comforting smile the last thing he saw before they started driving to the hospital. Chapter 7, Your Sister Has. The journey to the hospital wasn't long nor short, it was about 20 minutes filled with tension, with Arthur clinging to his sister's side as the ambulance rushed through the city streets. When they finally arrived at the A&E, Arthur's eyes dilated by the chaotic scene. The waiting area was overflowing with people, each lost in their world of pain and worry. Arthur's heart sank. It would be hours before we are seen. Can she hold on? As he looked at his sister, he thought, his worry etched on his face. Time crawled by, each second stretching as Arthur's mind spiraled with worry and frustration. Damn it, what is this? He thought, gripping his knees tightly as he glanced down at Charlotte, who was still pale and barely conscious. Every part of him ached with helplessness, anger simmering beneath the surface. If only I was rich, if only I had real power, he thought bitterly. I wouldn't be at their mercy, forced to wait and beg for help like this. Finally, after 4 long hours, a nurse called his name. Arthur. Yes, I'm here. He quickly said, as he got up and carried his sister. Follow me, she said, before turning around. He followed her into a sterile examination room, holding Charlotte's hand tightly as she was placed on the examination bed. The doctor got close, his clipboard in hand, his gaze flicking between Charlotte and Arthur before he approached her. The doctor went through his initial checks, his face shifting into a frown as he completed the physical exam. He looked up at Arthur, his expression grave and gloomy. She's showing signs of... He paused, almost hesitant to continue. Middle to late signs of... cancer. Arthur's eyes widened, his grip on the edge of his chair tightening as the doctor dropped the bombshell. What? What did you just say? He demanded, standing up, his voice laced with anger and disbelief. His whole world seemed to spin at that moment. Cancer. The word echoed in his mind, dark and cold. The doctor raised a hand, urging him to calm down. I understand this might be a lot to take in, but I need you to stay calm. I'm only saying she's showing signs. I'm not saying it's a confirmed diagnosis. Arthur's heart was pounding in his chest, his mind racing. So, what now? He asked, voice laced with both dread and desperation. The doctor sighed, his expression solemn. We'll need to run more tests to be sure, but... But what? Just say it, Arthur pressed, feeling his patience wearing thin. The doctor hesitated, his gaze flicking over Arthur's worn clothes and the rough condition of his sister's blanket. The tests are expensive. I don't think you'll be able to afford them. Arthur felt a flash of anger flare up, burning away the desperation and fear. The doctor's pitying expression only made it worse. He clenched his fists, meeting the doctor's gaze with a steely glare. Don't give us that look, Arthur said coldly, his voice filled with barely restrained fury. I don't need your pity. He reached into his pocket, pulling out the card with every last dollar he had from the other world. Holding it out to the doctor, he forced himself to speak evenly. I have the money. Here, take it. The doctor looked at the card, clearly surprised, though a trace of skepticism remained in his eyes. After a brief pause, he took it, nodding slowly as he approached the POS machine. He calculated the price for the necessary tests, his expression unreadable as he tapped the card against the reader. Ding. The payment was successful. $500 has been deducted, Arthur exhaled, watching as the transaction went through. I still have more, in case anything happens, he thought, grateful that he was selected as a beta tester. His focus was solely on Charlotte. As the doctor went to arrange the tests, Arthur returned to his sister's side, his mind racing with a painful mix of anger, sadness, and determination. No matter what it takes, he thought, brushing a strand of hair from Charlotte's face, I'll make sure she gets through this. I'll find a way. Arthur sat in the cold, waiting room once more as his sister underwent the tests, his mind occupied with his thoughts that he couldn't quiet down or dismiss. He glanced at the clock, noting how slowly time crawled. Cancer. Signs of it, at least, he thought bitterly. It was a word that haunted him now. Everything was finally getting better. Why? Why? He thought as he looked down at his hands, clenched into tight fists on his lap. How could this happen? To her, of all people? As he waited, memories from their childhood flashed through his mind. If only I had more money. Real money. Real power. The thought swirled in his brain, as anger and frustration built up. He was tired of scraping by, of constantly being at the mercy of others, of fate itself. He wanted control, the kind that didn't rely on someone's pity or charity. If he had the means, Charlotte wouldn't be lying in that room, waiting for tests they could barely afford. Hours later, the doctor returned, his face calm but unreadable. He motioned for Arthur to follow him into the small office, where he sat across from the doctor, his heart thumping hard against his chest. All right, the doctor began, flipping through the charts and notes. We've run the preliminary tests, but to be sure of her condition, we'll need to perform a few more detailed exams in the coming days. Arthur swallowed hard, trying to keep his voice steady. What? What did the tests say? Chapter 8, Hospital. The tests. They aren't looking good, the doctor replied, with a grim look. Arthur clenched his fists, suppressing the rage he was feeling and the sadness. The doctor hesitated for a moment, his face softening slightly. It's still too early to say for sure, but there are indicators that suggest the need for immediate treatment for her. The next tests will help us confirm if it's cancer or something else. However, I can't tell you it isn't. Be prepared for the worst. Arthur's mind raced as he processed the information. What do I need to do? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The doctor gave him a sympathetic look. First, make sure you're prepared financially for the worst. Cancer treatments are costly. But as I said, that's the worst outcome. Hopefully it isn't. Arthur nodded numbly, his emotions a storm inside him. I need to go back to the other world, I need to amass more power, more money. He thought as he looked at his sister. Alright, how much will it cost to place her in intensive care in her own room? He asked as he looked at the doctor. The doctor asked, not expecting Arthur to say that. Well, it will cost around $200 a day, including food of course. He replied. Arthur nodded and said. Alright, can you place her in there? Also, am I allowed to sleep in the room with her? He asked. Yes, we can place her in there. However, you will have to pay a deposit of 1 day and payment for a day. Regarding whether you can stay or not, I'm afraid, you cannot with the package of $200. If you want to stay in there, you would need to pay for the $500 package, he added. Arthur nodded his head. Alright, we will proceed with the $200 room. Here you go, he said, as he handed him the card once more. Ding. The payment was successful. $400 has been deducted. Alright, I will ask the nurses to move her there, you can stay with her until 8 p.m. He said as he glanced at the time. Arthur nodded and got up from his seat. Alright, he said, his voice carrying no emotion. As Arthur got up from his seat, the doctor looked at his hand and a flicker of emotion appeared in his mind. He is a beta tester? He thought but didn't voice it out. After moving with his sister to the room, he stayed with her until it reached 8 p.m. Although she was asleep, he still found peace in staying with her. He stayed with her for around 2 hours before the time hit 8 p.m. A nurse came to Arthur. Sir, the time is you, I understand, Arthur whispered, cutting her off. Glancing at Charlotte for the final time, he walked towards her bed, kissed her forehead, then left with the nurse. As he left the hospital, the cold breeze struck him. Great, I am far from our spot and it's so cold, it couldn't get worse, he thought. But life seemed to be playing games with him as it immediately started raining. Great, he muttered, as his body started getting soaked by the rain. After taking shelter in a small resting area in a park, he entered the game. Spawning in the place he left, he found Hank and Nako waiting for him. He decided to head to the alchemist shop to buy a few health potions. He didn't have much time to waste waiting to recover, so he decided to buy a health potion to save time. As he arrived at the alchemist store, he found that someone was standing in front of the store. Unsure if he was waiting or not, he asked. Are you waiting to buy? Arthur asked as he glanced at the woman in front of him. Oh no, you can go ahead. I'm just checking what potion should I buy, so you can go first, she said, as she moved out of the way. Alright, Arthur continued, arriving in front of the counter. Hello adventurer, do you want to buy anything? We have all kinds of potions, we have mana potions, health potions, poison and many more. She exclaimed. Hi, I would like to buy 1 health potion of common rank. He said as he glanced at the items they had on display. He would have bought the uncommon health potion, but unfortunately, potions started from the common rank. That will be 3 silver coins, the young man said as he placed the potion on the table waiting for Arthur to pay. After paying up, the woman's face beamed in joy as she looked at Arthur. Congratulations, sir. You are our 100th customer. You have won 5 free health potions, she said, as she quickly grabbed the potions and placed them on the desk. Huh? Arthur was confused at the beginning, then his face showed shock. Me? He asked one final time, as he pointed towards himself whilst looking around. Yes, sir, you, she said, placing the items in front of him. Thanks, I guess? The woman who gave Arthur her place a minute earlier, looked at him in shock. Her face twisted in a gloomy look. That was mine, give it to me, she said as she tried to take the potions away. Arthur was too quick for her, placing them in his inventory. He had a place for them because of the backpacks he had. Looking at her with a frown, he said. What do you mean it's yours? She clearly said it's mine. The woman looked at him with a hideous look covering her face. I know she did, I'm not deaf. But, I was the one who gave you the spot. So you should at least give me some, or are you this ungrateful you little brat, she spat out. I don't owe you shit, now fuck off, he said, as he left the store without looking back at her. Chapter 9, Nasty woman. She didn't listen and followed him whilst throwing curses left, right and center. After realizing that she wasn't going to stop, he glared at her. If you don't stop following me, I will make you regret it, he said, his tone ice cold. Not until you give me my potion, I will make your life miserable. So just give me one and I will call it even. Arthur glared at her for a second. Thinking about it for a second, he nodded his head. Fine, I will give it to you, he said, as he took out a health potion out of his inventory and handed it to her. After taking the health potion, her angry expression turned into a smirk before turning around and leaving. Arthur looked at her leaving, memorizing her face and figure. I can't deal with her right now. But, I will make her pay for this when the time is right, he thought, as he turned around and left the village heading outside to level up. I need to farm. I'm sure people have already reached level 5 and chosen their class, he muttered, as he killed a corroded rabbit with ease, dropping another backpack. You have slain a corroded rabbit. Backpack, uncommon, has been dropped. Damn, that cat's talent is actually 2 up. He muttered as he picked up the backpack. To think that I am getting uncommon rank items from these low-level mobs. A smirk formed on his face, as he realized that he would be getting higher-ranked items later when he fights stronger monsters. Arthur glanced at Hank, a grin stretching across his face. Alright, Hank, you know the drill. Use that scout talent of yours and find us some easy targets. Hank, perched proudly on his shoulder, let out an enthusiastic shriek before taking to the sky. Arthur watched him soar proudly in the air, scanning the area with his scout skill. It didn't take long for Hank to locate a promising group that screamed money to Arthur. The hawk let out a sharp call to Arthur and darted to the east, leading Arthur toward a small clearing. A few minutes later, they came upon their prey, a group of 5 corroded beetles at and about, their greenish shells thicker than wood. They looked nasty but relatively harmless, each only around level 2, which was a perfect setup for an easy farm for equipment. 5 beetles? Arthur murmured, as he readied himself. It's like they've lined up just for us. Hank, go wait above them, Arthur instructed, as he followed behind. Hank swooped down, circling above as he awaited Arthur's command. Arthur couldn't help but smirk. Time to make some money. But before he charged, he couldn't resist glancing over his shoulder toward a certain nearby tree stump. And, of course, there she was, Neko, the legendary primordial beast he summoned, lazing on her side, one paw raised as she casually licked it. She didn't even glance in their direction, clearly immersed in her own world. Oh, don't mind us, Neko, Arthur muttered sarcastically. We're only going to be risking our lives here while you nap. Again. Neko, unbothered by Arthur's provocation, continued grooming herself as though he were an annoying background noise. Arthur rolled his eyes. What a summon, truly primordial. Alright, Hank, let's show her what a real work ethic looks like. Arthur shouted, tightening his grip on his weapon. Hank shrieked in agreement, diving in a wide arc as he prepared for his part in the attack. With a battle cry, Arthur charged forward, swinging his stone sword with confidence as he met the first beetle head-on. His sword landed with a satisfying crack against the beetle's shell. -10 health point. The beetle stumbled back, its legs flailing in the air. Arthur smirked, readying himself for another strike, but before he could finish it off, one of the other beetles let out a low hiss and charged at him, its tiny feet clicking aggressively. Oh, wow, scary stuff, Arthur quipped, sidestepping the beetle's slow-motion attack with exaggerated flair. A beetle with an attitude problem? Am I attacking your wife, sir? As he danced around the beetles avoiding their weak attacks, Hank swooped down, landing a quick strike on one of the beetles' backs with his talons. -6 health point. The beetle spun in a dizzy circle, clearly dazed by the hit. Hank immediately lifted off again, his timing perfect. They'd gotten used to each other's roles, and it showed in the way they switched attacks so effortlessly. Their coordination was much better than when they attacked the wild boar. Great work, Hank. Arthur called out, delivering another solid blow to a beetle in front of him. As he whirled around to face the next one, his eyes caught Neko still lazing around. By this point, she'd found herself a sunny patch, where she had curled up with her eyes closed, clearly uninterested in their mortal combat with these low-level creeps. Oh, don't get up to help or anything, he muttered sarcastically. I mean, why would you, right? It's not like I summoned you to fight with me. Damn it, this game hates me too. He spat out, as he looked at Neko lazing around. They could have gamed me some overpowered dragon that would make me ride it to the top of this game. But they had to give me a lazy cat. Sigh. Meanwhile, one of the beetles had managed to crawl behind Arthur and went in for a nibble on his boot. He felt a sharp pinch on his ankle and let out a yelp. Hey! Are you a pervert? Why are you licking my ankles? Do you have a flipping foot fetish, you weirdo? Hank, realizing that Arthur was cornered, quickly swooped in just in time, grabbing the pesky beetle with his talons and tossing it a few feet away. Thanks, Hank, Arthur said, giving the hawk a thumbs up as he dusted himself off. If it weren't for you, I'd be sexually harassed by a beetle. Another beetle tried to sneak up on Arthur, thinking that it would work again. But Arthur looked down at it, amused. Wow. Bold move, little guy, he said, stepping away from the beetle. The beetle was determined to eat his toes. You want to taste my feet so bad? Alright, eat this. Arthur stomped down the beetle's unprotected head, turning it to mash, then turned to see Hank delivering the final blow on another beetle. Only one beetle remained, which was now scuttling back in a desperate attempt to flee away. "Oh no, you don't," Arthur said, striding forward to cut off its escape. "We can't let you go back and tell your clan about us." Hank let out a screech, and they both dealt a blow to the last beetle. "You have slain a corroded beetle." As the last beetle disintegrated, Arthur leaned on his sword, catching his breath, feeling slightly exhausted. He turned back to find Neko still lying in her sunny spot, now sprawled out as if she'd just had the busiest day of her life. "Wow, Neko," he called out, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "How is the breeze over there? Do you want some air conditioner?" Neko cracked one eye open, giving him a lazy blink before promptly closing it again. She shifted slightly, curling up tighter, and resumed her nap. Arthur sighed while rolling his eyes. "All right, Hank," he said, a grin spreading across his face. "That was pretty good. Do you think you can find us another group?" Hank gave an enthusiastic shriek, flapping his wings as he soared upward, clearly ready for another hunt. Chapter 10, Hidden Dungeon? As Hank looked for another group of monsters to farm some levels and equipment, Arthur calculated the time it would take to level up to the next level. It should take around 3 to 4 hours more. Even though I have Hank's scout skill, the players seem to have killed many of the monsters, and they still haven't respawned yet. After around 10 minutes of looking for their next target, Hank spotted another group of beetles. They were also level 2. "Are beetles only level 2s in this area?" he muttered, but quickly shrugged it off, focusing on the fight ahead. He finished the group of 3 beetles quickly with Hank's cooperation. "You have slain a corroded beetle. Stone sword, uncommon, has been dropped. Backpack, uncommon, has been dropped. Armor, uncommon, has been dropped. Armor? That's a new drop," he muttered, as he picked it up and wore it. After wearing the armor, he realized that he could either hide the armor making it invisible or show it. That's convenient. After moving around in the armor, he realized that it slightly restricted his movement. "Well, I am not a pro at dodging, so it's still an amazing addition to my safety," he muttered as he kept it on. He was going to sell the other items and keep this armor for himself to use. Arthur let out a deep breath, watching the pixelated remains of the corroded rabbit dissolve into thin air as the familiar notification chimed in his ear. "Ding, you have slain a corroded rabbit," he smirked, waiting for what he hoped would finally be the moment he'd been grinding for hours. "Ding, you have leveled up to level 3, all attribute points will be increased by 1, you have gained 1 free attribute point and 1 skill point." Finally, Arthur muttered, feeling a rush of satisfaction as he checked his new stats. It had been 3 hours, they had spent chasing down every creature in the area. Every 10 to 15 minutes, he and Hank managed to find a new target, but it was becoming exhausting. They'd barely encountered any variety in the monsters, mostly corroded rabbits and, of course, those eternally low-level beetles. "I will make sure to stomp on every beetle I see on Earth, I'm sick and tired of them." As he turned to scan the forest, Hank let out a satisfied shriek and landed on Arthur's shoulder, his feathers ruffling. Arthur reached up and gave the hawk a gentle scratch on the head. "Good work, Hank. Thanks to you, we actually managed to find enough targets to hit level 3. Hank fluffed up, clearly pleased with himself. Neko was as lazy as ever, but what surprised Arthur was that the monsters don't attack her. "I wonder why?" he thought. She'd only lifted a paw if a monster happened to wander too close to her, and even then, she barely extended her claws before dismissing them as unworthy of her effort. "All right, lazy bones," he said, rolling his eyes at Neko, "we're heading back to the village. Don't get lost." He glanced at his inventory, filled with items he'd gathered over the past few hours. Backpacks, a couple of stone swords, armor and some other items. It had been decent loot, but he knew the value of these items wouldn't hold for long. With so many other players out farming, the market prices were bound to drop as more items flooded in. "If I waste any more time, the cost of these items will depreciate faster than I can sell them," he thought, his stomach nodding slightly. "If that happens, I won't even know where to cry." With a sigh, he looked toward the path leading back to the village. "Come on, Hank. Let's get back and cash in while we still can," he muttered, walking down the trail, his mind already racing with plans for his next level-up strategy. As he walked, Neko lagged along a few steps behind, moving at her own unhurried pace, stretching with every other step as though she'd done all the hard work herself. Yeah, don't overexert yourself there, Neko," he muttered, a smirk forming as he adjusted the straps of his new armor. Arthur couldn't help but shake his head. The difference in Hank's excitement in fighting monsters, and Neko's absolute disregard for anything made him feel nostalgic. "It reminds me of when the teacher used to put the bully and the victim in the same group, thinking they would work well together," he sighed, glancing one final time at Neko. As they made their way back to the village, Arthur glanced over his shoulder to check what the cat was doing. But as he turned he noticed that Neko was not following him. The lazy cat had actually wandered off on her own, her nose twitching as if sniffing out some hidden secret. "Hey! Where are you going?" Arthur called out, his voice suspicious. Neko barely glanced in his direction, entirely focused on whatever had piqued her interest. Arthur squinted watching the cat walk between trees, occasionally glancing back at him with an unreadable expression. "This cat is actually looking for something?" Arthur muttered, genuinely intrigued now. "Okay fine, you got my attention. Let's see what you are looking for," he muttered. Neko had been indifferent and nonchalant even since he summoned her, but now she was moving for a reason in her mind it seemed. She wasn't lounging, sunbathing, or ignoring him outright like usual, she was leading the way. For once, she seems almost motivated, Arthur thought, glancing at the cat. Arthur exchanged a quick look with Hank, who shrieked, clearly bewildered by her actions. Arthur made up his mind to follow her until she reached what she was looking for. Who knows, it might be a good thing. Hopefully. It is, he thought. After all, he'd never seen her act like this before. It might be worth the detour. Arthur and Hank followed her through bushes and in between trees. Her small, white figure slipped between bushes and hopped over roots with ease. Meanwhile Arthur struggled to leave some bushes due to his size and their spiky, entangling nature. Damn it, is this cat doing this on purpose? Why is she purposefully going through the bushes? He muttered silently but still followed her through another bush. After a couple of minutes of walking, Arthur found himself ducking under a low-hanging branch and emerging into a small clearing. His eyes widened as his eyes registered the sight before him. "A cave?" he muttered. It was half hidden behind an overgrowth of vines and moss, nestled between two large, twisted trees. It looked ordinary enough at first glance, but something about it exuded a sense of mystery, as though it were veiled in a faint, otherworldly aura. Neko stood in front of the cave entrance, sitting on her haunches and studying it intently, her gaze fixed as if sizing it up. She seemed entirely captivated by whatever lay within, her normally lazy eyes focused. Arthur approached her cautiously, standing beside her as he observed the cave. "So, what exactly are we looking at here, Neko?" he asked, half expecting an answer he knew would never come. Without any warning, Neko glanced up at him and then, in a single bound, leapt onto his shoulder, settling herself there like a queen on a throne. She sat perfectly poised, her eyes still locked onto the cave, her tail flicking left and right. Arthur waited, expecting her to leap down and lead him into the cave. But instead, she simply sat there, as if waiting for him to make the first move. A feeling of exasperation bubbled up in Arthur. Damn it! Is she treating me as her servant or something? Why does it feel like I'm the summon and she's the master? The lazy, yet commanding, look she gave him only reinforced the feeling. Her eyes narrowed slightly, as though reminding him that she had chosen to lead him here, and he should be grateful for it. Arthur gritted his teeth, letting out a resigned sigh. "Fine. I'll check it out," he muttered, casting one last look at her little face that had an unreadable expression. I can almost swear that she is feeling smug about this on the inside. With Hank perched on a nearby branch, keeping a vigilant eye out, Arthur took his first step into the mouth of the cave. As he passed beneath the overhanging vines, a faint, cold breeze drifted from within, carrying with it a weird scent and something else, something metallic, like old, rusted iron. His footsteps echoed softly as he ventured deeper, his senses growing with each step. I need to be vigilant here, I don't know what I could find in this weird place, Arthur thought, as he held his sword in front of him. After a few moments, he came upon an open cavern, and his eyes caught a glimmer of light reflecting off a collection of something. "What's that?" he muttered, whilst squinting, his curiosity piqued. On the ground before him lay a bunch of rusted weapons and armor, half buried in the dirt, as though forgotten by time. Most of the items were rusty and worn, but as he sifted through them, his hand brushed against something smooth and solid. He pulled it free, revealing a dark, iron-hued dagger with a faint crimson sheen along its edge. The blade felt cool and sharp, and it seemed to hum softly in his hand, as though alive with a strange power. Iron dagger, rare, a dagger of an old hero, lost through time. The dagger yearns to be used again and achieve its mission of spreading chaos. Arthur's eyes widened, a grin spreading across his face. "Now, this is what I'm talking about," he whispered, feeling the weight of the weapon in his grip. The dagger had a strange aura to it, one that made his skin prickle with a sense of foreboding, but he couldn't deny its allure. "A rare dagger? This is what I like to see," he chuckled, placing his sword back into his inventory. "This thing is worth at least a couple hundred silvers at this stage of the game." It was the rank above uncommon, and he was sure that only monsters of higher level could drop something like this. It's probably even stronger than items that are gotten from ordinary monsters, the description says a lot about it. Neko's eyes gleamed as she watched him examine the dagger, And for a brief moment, Arthur thought he saw a flicker of disgust in her eyes. It was as if Arthur was holding something dirty. "Is she feeling disgusted?" he muttered, glancing over at her. She ignored him and kept looking forward as if he still hadn't reached what they had come for. Arthur rolled his eyes at her indifference. "Fine, let's see what's inside." With the dagger securely in hand, he glanced around and examined a few more of the items strewn about, but most of them were too degraded to be of any use. He ventured inside the cave for a bit more. And, suddenly he heard something. "You have discovered the hidden realm, Forsaken Legacy. You are the first to discover a hidden realm. Difficulty, normal. The rewards will be increased by 2 times. Chapter 11, Global Announcement. An announcement will be made to all beta players, a global announcement to all players." "That's tricky," he thought, as a frown formed on his face. "Would you like to reveal your name? Yes or no?" Phew, almost thought I was done for a second there. He wiped a non-existent sweat bead from his forehead. "No." Arthur selected, without hesitation. He didn't have enough power in the real world, and nor did he have enough power in this world. "It's too risky, especially since the people I trade with will see my name," he muttered silently. Global announcement. Attention to all players. Player has discovered the first secret realm in Armageddon. "A secret realm?" said a man, with red hair as he fought against a few level 4 monsters alone. Somewhere far away from Arthur, a woman with silver hair opened her eyes. "Interesting," she muttered, as a smirk formed on her face. Her beautiful ocean eyes slowly closed again. Arthur felt the familiar feeling of teleportation as the cave faded away, replaced by the shadowed, dense growth of an ancient forest. "What is this place?" he thought, glancing at the trees around him stretched high, their branches twisted and scary. There was barely any light let through due to the dense trees. He glanced around uneasily. The forest was very strange. Every so often, he could hear faint sounds of screaming or crying in the distance. "Damn it, I'm already regretting coming here," he muttered, feeling a shiver crawl up his spine. The place had a vibe he did not like at all. Why does it feel so creepy? He took a steadying breath, determined not to let the eerie atmosphere get to him. "Come on, Arthur, you can't always remain weak," he thought, clenching his fists. "I need to get stronger." He gave his cheeks a light slap with both hands, as if to shake off the unease, and forced himself to focus. To his relief, Hank and Neko were still by his side. Hank sat alert on his shoulder, his eyes scanning the trees with a hawk's sharp focus, while Neko walked along at her own pace, her nonchalant expression back. As they moved deeper into the forest, a faint noise drifted through the trees. Creak. Arthur stopped in his tracks, glancing around for the source of the sound. What are those noises?" he whispered, casting a quick glance at Neko. Surely, she'd have some idea, after all, she was the one who led him here in the first place. But the Neko merely looked up at him, unimpressed, her gaze dismissive as she resumed her casual stroll. Arthur sighed. He buried his face in his hands, his palms pressing against his eyes as if to block out the absurdity before him. "Great. Perfect time to go back to acting like you don't care," he muttered, rubbing his forehead. "Thanks a lot, Neko." A small rustling sound caught his attention next, like leaves brushing against each other in a soft, persistent whisper. He quickly turned around, his dagger in hand ready for an altercation. After waiting for a while, nothing happened. SHHHH. It was so faint that he almost missed it, but there it was again. The noise seemed to come from somewhere just ahead of him, as though something or someone was whispering through the trees. Arthur couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched by something, but he didn't know what or where it was. "All right, this place is seriously messed up," he muttered, gripping his dagger closer to his chest. The forest around him seemed almost alive, the shadows seemed to move in ways that made him question his own senses. "Am I hallucinating?" he thought as he could have sworn he saw a shadow move. A cold breeze suddenly traveled towards them, sending chills down his spine as it rustled the leaves above. Scratch. Scrape. Hank let out a sharp shriek, alerting Arthur to move off to their left. Arthur squinted, but all he could make out were the vague shapes of tree branches. "Hank, stay on alert, all right?" Arthur said, his voice heavy. Hank gave a low shriek in response, his eyes scanning their surroundings. Arthur looked down at Neko, who was now sitting calmly, staring straight into the dark expanse ahead. Creak. Snap. Another sound echoed again from behind, making him turn around quickly. But as he turned around, there is nothing there? Ugh, this must be a ghost playing games with me, he muttered in frustration. "Just show up and fight, stop playing these petty tricks," he spat out, glancing around in slight fear. Despite the slight fear, he took a deep breath and continued, his footsteps crunching softly on tree branches. The ground was uneven, littered with decaying leaves and vines that seemed to move slightly with each step. Arthur gritted his teeth, doing his best to shake off the anxiety creeping up his spine. "This place feels like it's testing me," he murmured. "But I can't turn back. It's too late." As Hank and Arthur walked around vigilant for any sound or movement, Neko had resumed her leisurely stride, occasionally glancing back as if checking to make sure Arthur was following. "What lies deeper in this place?" he thought, glancing into the darkness of the forest. As they walked into the forest, Hank suddenly shrieked and attacked a shadow of a tree. 6 health point Hank? Arthur got confused, seeing his summon attacking a shadow, but his face later showed the shock. The shadow moved? He thought, not believing what he was looking at. "It's really moving, the shadow is moving," he said, rubbing his eyes. After Hank attacked the shadow, Arthur was able to see the information. Shadow Slave, level, 3 health points, 40 physical damage, 11, details, a slave long forgotten in the realms of the vast universe. Glancing at the shadow information provided by the system, he frowned. Shadow Slave. "Really?" he muttered. "I mean, that's cool, especially since it's quite sunless here. Seems like I will be committing a horrendous act that many will hate," he thought, as a smirk appeared on his face. "Time to level up, Hank, you ready?" he said as he charged in at the shadow. "You have slain a Shadow Slave, magic wand, uncommon, has been dropped. So there are new item drops in this area. Interesting," he said, as he placed the magic wand in the backpack. "Let's go," he gestured for Hank, as he continued forward. On the way, he met with a few more shadow slaves that he beat with Hank without any issues. "What is this?" he said, examining the narrow path that was in front of him. "Well, I have no option but to get in since I can't go back anyway." He shook his head and entered. Arthur continued down the narrow path, pushing branches aside and stepping carefully over roots that were embedded in the soil. The forest around him was silent and eerie, its shadows swallowing every atom of light that dared to filter through. He could feel an odd, oppressive aura in the air. It was like an invisible hand on his shoulder. After walking for what felt like an eternity, he stopped, frowning as he scanned his surroundings. Something feels off, he thought. He couldn't place it at first. Everything looked as it had 10 minutes ago, the same trees, the same silence, the same strange feeling of being watched. "Yeah, something is definitely wrong," he muttered, as he checked his surroundings. He quickly took out his dagger and marked a tree on his right with an X shape. After marking it, he continued walking, and 10 minutes later he was still walking and everything felt the same yet again. "I can't be at the same place, I haven't seen the mark at all," he thought. Although everything pointed to him being in the same place as before, the mark he placed on the tree wasn't there. "Wait," he thought, when something suddenly clicked in his mind. Glancing at the trees next to him with a slight frown, Arthur reached into his inventory and pulled out a stone sword, uncommon, he didn't care much about. Crouching down, he placed it on the forest floor and marked the nearby tree with a quick scratch from his dagger. "Alright, let's see what's going on here," he muttered to himself, glancing at Hank, who had settled on a branch above him, and Neko, who was busy licking her paws a few steps behind. He moved forward, letting his feet carry him down the path once more, his senses on high alert as every fiber of his body was alert. He walked, counting each step and second in his mind, focusing on every twist and turn of the forest trail, determined to make some progress. 10 minutes passed, and Arthur felt the ground level off as he approached a clearing. But as he looked down at the forest floor, his heart skipped a beat. There, lying on the ground, was the stone sword he'd placed earlier, and the scratch on the nearby tree he had made was gone. "Oh no. This isn't good," he muttered, horror creeping in. He knelt down, his knees touching the forest ground as his fingers hovered over the stone sword, as if it might vanish. He'd been walking in circles. No, it was worse. Somehow, he'd been walking forward for 10 minutes, only to end up exactly where he'd started. His mind reeled, racing through possibilities. Is this some kind of illusion? Or a trap? Arthur gritted his teeth, unwilling to accept that he was trapped so easily. He stood up, determination hardening on his features. "Alright, let's try this again," he said, scanning the trees with a keener eye. This time, he pulled a piece of bark from a nearby tree and dropped it onto the path, marking it with an X. He nodded to himself and moved forward again, making sure to remember each detail of his surroundings. He counted his steps and timed himself again, glancing back occasionally to reassure himself that he was moving farther away from the marking. 10 minutes later, Arthur paused and looked down at the ground. His breath hitched. The marked bark was gone, not lying on the path next to the stone sword. "Damn it. What's going on?" Arthur muttered, his frustration increasing. He kicked some soil away in anger, but it only thudded softly. Hank, sensing his distress, let out a soft shriek, but even his reassuring presence couldn't quell the unsettling feeling crawling up Arthur's spine. Chapter 12, Paradoxy was trapped in a frightening loop, a paradox that seemed impossible to escape. Alright, fine. You want to play games? Arthur muttered, pulling out another stone sword, uncommon. He planted it firmly in the ground, slightly angled as a new marker for his plan. Then, he grabbed a handful of pebbles from the forest floor and arranged them in a straight line, forming a trail he could follow. If I can't use the trees as a trail, then I will use my equipment and pebbles. He muttered, scoffing at the forest around him. There, he said, satisfied. Try to confuse me now. He started walking again, each step carefully taken, whilst glancing frequently at the ground to make sure he was still leaving the trail. But as he moved forward, something strange began to happen. One by one, the pebbles he'd placed started to vanish from its place, as though the forest itself were swallowing them up into an endless void. He watched in shock as with every few steps he took, another pebble disappeared from his sight. What the? Arthur stammered, realizing that his worst fear was right. His trail was being erased, each step he took seemingly rewriting reality behind him. Everything in this forest is being erased? He muttered as he glanced over his shoulder, half expecting to see his starting point right there, but it was only empty darkness stretching back endlessly. He clenched his fists, feeling determined to find a way out of this maze. Alright, if that's how you want to play. I will play with you, he said to the forest, although it was mainly to reassure himself. Arthur took a deep breath, focusing on each step and each sound around him. He wasn't going to miss any detail of the forest, he couldn't. He kept his pace slow, observing everything, making sure nothing missed his eyes. 10 minutes passed, and he found himself back in the same spot. It's the same spot, shit. He cursed. He was where he'd started, with a stone sword, uncommon, planted firmly in the ground and his initial markers gone. It's like the forest resets every 10 minutes, he realized as shock and frustration built up within him. The idea of an infinite paradox was mind-boggling. No matter how far he walked, he would always be pulled back, his progress erased. Arthur walked in circles around his markers, trying to think. So if it's a reset, then that means there must be a trigger, or maybe a way to stop it. He muttered. Taking a deep breath, he stood still, letting his mind race through everything he'd observed. Everything he had been doing to try to get out, the sounds he'd heard, the rustling, the whispers and the shadow salve that had moved. He knelt beside the stone sword, running his fingers along its hilt. If it's resetting, then that means there's something that doesn't want me to move forward. And maybe, just maybe, it can't reset everything at once. Realistically, it doesn't seem to be able to reset my equipment. It had been able to do that to the pebbles and marks on the trees. But it can't seem to touch my equipment, he thought as a theory formed in his mind, and he felt excited that he might have found the way out. This might actually work, he thought, although, it will be damn expensive. Quickly, he stood and left the sword as a marker but began pulling out other items he had, such as wooden sword common, and stone sword uncommon, and other items. He spread them across the path, creating a map of markers. He went back to the sword, moved a tree branch and placed it next to it. Then he waited. He stood still, watching his markers, his heart pounding as he held his breath, waiting for the next reset. A sudden gust of wind swept through the forest. In an instant, he felt something change. When he looked down, the tree branch was gone, and the stone sword remained. He stared at it, hope swelling. That's it, he muttered, realization dawning on him. Only things I'm connected to directly can survive the reset. Arthur then quickly walked forward, picking up every item he had dropped until he saw the sword from about 2 meters away. He threw an item on the floor and waited in between both of them. He was trying to break the loop, by staying at the weakness of the loop. Right between the end and the beginning of the loop. Minutes passed, each step feeling like a battle against the forest. But he waited. This has to work, he thought. As the time for the reset was about to be reached, the system notified him. 12 hours had passed since you entered, time is up, teleporting in 3, 2, 1, teleporting, no, just wait a few seconds. He yelled out, as he felt the gust of wind coming. Damn it, the damn system might have just ruined everything I had done. He cursed out, as he found himself in the middle of the park. Chapter 13, Armageddon. The cold breeze struck him as he appeared in the park. It was in the middle of the night. Great, not only is it cold, it's dark too, Arthur sighed. Arthur's gaze locked onto the large billboard as the broadcast illuminated the dark street. A news reporter, her expression solemn and unyielding, addressed the camera with a level of urgency that made him stop in his tracks. Her voice carried the weight of the subject, a tone that hinted at fear and uncertainty, as she spoke to the millions who were no doubt watching, just as transfixed as he was. Armageddon, she said, her voice echoing over the quiet night, has placed our world in a predicament, one that we never could have anticipated. This phenomenon known as Armageddon she intoned, her voice low but steady, is not something of human design. It is not a game made by us, nor a simulation constructed by our technologies. It is an event, a summoning, that we do not control. Humanity has been thrust into this universe-wide ordeal without choice, without preparation. And as this new reality looms before us, we must confront the truth. Armageddon is here, and it is changing everything we know. The Earth itself, the reporter continued, is shifting. And the people living on it, we, are changing too, though many of us cannot yet see the full extent of it. At least that's what Armageddon has promised us, a change that we cannot stop. Beta testers, randomly selected individuals from all walks of life, are being drawn into Armageddon's world. And now, the reporter continued, the governments of the world are beginning to respond. We cannot deny this as an isolated event, as if it's merely happening in a virtual reality. It is affecting our reality here and now. The currencies of Armageddon are finding their way into our economies. Leaders are forming teams, gathering players based on their talent rankings, an entirely new kind of hierarchy. And now, we face a future where these players could become a new kind of elite. Individuals with high-ranking talents are being scouted, drafted, and ranked in tiers of influence, based not on their wealth, or titles, or power as we knew it, but on their abilities, their talents, within Armageddon. The screen switched to a press conference, where government officials sat. Their faces were grim, and their expressions heavy as they addressed the press and public. In response to Armageddon's unprecedented arrival, one official said, "We are organizing elite teams of players with ranked talents. These teams will not only explore this world but try to understand it. We have confirmed that one of our own holds a knee-rank talent, and for now, they will lead our strongest team. As S-rank talents are identified, we will ensure that they take positions where they can be managed." The screen cut back to the reporter, her voice adopting a contemplative tone, as though she were speaking to herself just as much as her audience. This is no longer simply about survival. It is about power, authority, perhaps even domination. It is the dawn of a new era, one where wealth, status, and influence are being redefined by a world we know almost nothing about. And as Armageddon continues to unfold, the question we must ask is this: will those who rise to the top of its ranks be heroes, protectors of humanity? Or will they become something else entirely? Her eyes glinted with a rare, raw vulnerability. Armageddon is not just a virtual experience, it is a call to war, a fight for dominance. And those with high-ranking talents are not just players, they are warriors, maybe even rulers. Her words lingered in the silence, her gaze intense, as though she could see straight into the hearts of her viewers. Armageddon has introduced a new kind of currency, a new kind of power. Those who are strong enough will change the world, but at what cost? How many will lose themselves in a pursuit for strength, for dominance, for survival? It is the dawn of a new age. But one born from forces we do not understand. And so we wait, holding our breath, wondering if those who rise will save us. Or if they will be the ones to bring about our downfall. Arthur thought about her words and he stood there, frozen, as a chill spread through him. It was as if a new chapter of his life had been forced open before he'd even turned the page. Heroes, huh? He muttered to himself, turning away from the billboard. It could never be me. Chapter 14, Drunkards. Arthur walked down the empty street, his steps echoing in the silence of the night. The city lights were bright as he walked on, shivering slightly from the cold breeze that hit his body, seeping through his thin, torn clothes. He kept his gaze on his surroundings, hoping to find some out-of-the-way corner where he could rest until morning. As he passed a row of bars that were beginning to close up for the night, the sound of laughter caught his ears. A group of 3 men stumbled out of a nearby pub, their voices loud and slurred, their eyes bloodshot and unfocused. They spotted him almost immediately, their attention drawn to his slender frame and handsome, youthful face. One of them, a burly man with a disheveled beard and unsteady stance, squinted in Arthur's direction. "Hey! Look at that one over there," he slurred, nudging his friend with a grin. "Is that a girl or a guy? Can barely tell from here." The second man, tall and skinny with a crooked smile, squinted as well, leaning forward to get a better look. "Oh, that's a guy all right. But damn, look at that pretty face. Could probably mistake him for a girl in the dark, huh?" The third one, shorter and stockier, let out a drunken laugh. "Hey, pretty boy. What are you doing walking alone at night? Looking for some fun?" Arthur stiffened at their sound, his shoulders tensing as he picked up his pace, hoping to leave them by putting some distance between himself and them. But the men noticed his quickened steps and took it as a challenge, laughing among themselves as they began to follow him. "Hey, come on now, no need to be shy," the tall man called out, his voice mocking. "A good girl like you doesn't walk around looking that good unless you want some attention, am I right?" "Maybe he's just lonely," the bearded one snickered, stumbling slightly as he followed Arthur's path. Or maybe he's a little scared out here by himself. Poor thing, looks like he could use some company. Hey! Arthur's mind raced, his pulse quickening as he considered how to escape without confronting them. There was no one around, no witnesses, just him and these three drunkards. They were getting closer, their expressions were filled with lust, becoming more intense with each step they took towards him. He clenched his fists, assessing the situation. Running might just encourage them to chase me. Maybe if I take one of them out, I can use the distraction to get away. The fat man in the lead stepped closer, his grin widening as he reached a hand out toward Arthur. Don't be like that, sweetheart. We're just trying to have a good time. You look like the kind who could help us with that. You know? Before he could finish, Arthur snapped into action, throwing a quick punch directly into the man's face. His fist connected on the man's jaw, sending a jolt of pain through Arthur's knuckles, but the effect was immediate. The man's eyes widened in shock as he staggered back, his expression frozen in surprise. He didn't even manage a gasp before he collapsed to the ground, his body twitching slightly before going limp. A faint trail of foam dribbled from his mouth, and his eyes rolled back into his head. Arthur froze, his heart pounding as he stared down at the man lying motionless on the ground. Did I hit him that hard? He thought, a wave of confusion crossing his mind. He glanced at the other two men, expecting them to lunge at him in anger, but they were both standing rooted in place, their faces pale and eyes wide as they stared at their fallen friend. What? What the hell? The tall man stammered, taking a shaky step back. Did you see that? He just knocked him out with one punch. The shorter man swallowed hard, his gaze darting between Arthur and his unconscious friend. He's foaming at the mouth. What? What did you do to him? You killed him. Arthur didn't wait for them to recover from their shock. Without another word, he turned and bolted down the street, his footsteps slowly disappearing. He put as much distance between himself and the men as possible. His mind reeled, his thoughts racing as he struggled to make sense of what had just happened. So weak? He thought, glancing back briefly to see the two remaining men still standing there, their faces etched with disbelief. They made no move to follow him, too stunned by the sight of their friend lying unconscious on the ground. Arthur quickened his pace, leaving them behind. Chapter 15, another day. Arthur slowed his pace as he realized he was far from the drunkards. Looking at his surroundings, he found himself drifting into one of the narrow, forgotten alleyways that no one enters. Guess that'll have to do, he murmured to himself, taking in the sight of cracked walls and crumbling brick. The faint smell of garbage filled the air, but he ignored it. The alleyway was just wide enough for him to sleep in. Nice, there are some newspapers and cardboard boxes, he muttered. They had probably been tossed aside, either another homeless person's baggage or some person's garbage. Either way, he was going to use it tonight. Arthur leaned back against the cold wall, he pulled his knees up and wrapped his arms around them, drawing himself in for some warmth in the dark, cold night. It wasn't comfortable, nowhere near it, far from it. But he was used to it by now. He'd gotten good at finding little corners like this, places where no one would bother him, places that most people wouldn't even glance at as they walked by. It's not much, he muttered, glancing at the broken alcohol bottle lying a few feet away. But at least no one's gonna find me here, it does the job. A soft sigh escaped him as he looked up at the slice of sky visible between the rooftops above. He let his head rest against the wall. It's funny, he thought. How something so disgusting can feel like home after a while. He thought, glancing at the dirty alleyway that was housing him when no one else did. This isn't a life, is it? He murmured to no one in particular. It's just surviving. Just getting by. The other world was nice, although it was dangerous. I felt alive, I felt like I had control over my life, over my future. He muttered as he couldn't wait to go back there. He closed his eyes, trying to get some sleep in. A few hours later, he opened his eyes back. I can't sleep, this type of life is really unbearable without Charlotte. He muttered, as his thoughts wandered to her. The warmth of her smile, the quiet strength in her eyes. She was the one bright spot in his life, the one thing that kept him pushing forward, and kept him getting up each day despite everything he went through. Just hang in there, all right, Charlotte? He whispered, his voice barely audible. I'm gonna get us out of this shithole soon. The night slowly drifted away, as the sun slowly rose, marking a new day. Opening up his eyes with difficulty, Arthur felt groggy. It's finally daytime, he muttered. He hadn't been able to sleep the whole time, he was in the realm between sleeping and being awake. It honestly felt like torture, but he couldn't do anything about it. Standing up and stretching, he made his way out of the alleyway. He smelled himself, bringing his twitching nose to his underarms. Damn it, I stink now, he said with disgust, as he glanced at the area he was in that was filled with garbage. I need to go back into Armageddon as soon as possible, and farm some more equipment. After leaving the alleyway, he stepped into the main road as people went about doing their thing. Be it work, appointments or just a morning job. Life seemed to be slightly different from before, as people seemed to have a lot on their minds due to the descent of Armageddon. But it wasn't an overwhelming change. In fact, some people found it a good change. He had heard many people talking about it, as they walked on their daily life. Being able to enter another world, plunder the resources of that world and transfer it to real money, it was simply a dream come true to many. Whilst others thought there was more to it than meets the eye. Arthur was in the middle. He wasn't firmly stuck into a position, and he believed it could be a good change. At least, it's good for me, he muttered, as he realized he wouldn't be able to pay for his sister's medication if it wasn't for the game. But there must be an equivalent exchange. The smirk on that man's face as he said the rules still irks me today, he muttered, remembering his smirk. Shaking his head, deciding to not worry about it for now. He headed to the hospital. It was a day visit anyway. I should be able to take a shower in the hospital, but I need some change, he realized, as he made it near the hospital. After looking around, he found a small clothing shop. After entering, he quickly bought a cheap set of clothes for $15 because of its low quality and left. Some new clothes, he smiled, as he couldn't wait to finally wear some new clothes in almost a month. Chapter 16, New Summon. 1. Arthur entered the hospital and headed towards his sister's department. Hematology department. Hello sir, how can I help you? A nurse asked him, as he entered the department. Hi, my sister is in room 24. I am here for the daily visit, he said, responding to her question. I see, let me know if you need any help. She nodded warmly, as she walked to do other things. Entering his sister's room, he looked at her as she slept. She must be very fatigued, he thought, as he headed to the room's shower. After showering, Arthur changed into new clothes and put the old ones into a bag. I can't throw these just yet, but I can still wash them and use them, he muttered. As he sat on the chair next to her bed, he looked at her beautiful face as she slept soundly. After watching her sleep for around 20 minutes, he realized that she probably wouldn't be awake anytime soon. So he decided to check if he was allowed to enter the game again. After heading to the bathroom, he decided to enter the game. Do you wish to enter? Yes or no? Yes. Teleporting back, he realized that he wasn't in the same spot anymore. Nice. I broke the paradox, he said in an excited look, as he found himself in a new place. He glanced to his side and found both of his summons waiting for him. He then glanced at the large door in front of him. It excused a sense of mystery and power he couldn't quite place. This door. There is something terrifying behind it, he thought, as he glanced at the runes that filled the huge, ancient-looking door in front of him. He then shifted his gaze to his summons. I just reached level 3, I can summon another one, but... he muttered, I will hold it for now, I can summon it inside anyway. As he approached the door, a new prompt appeared in front of him. You have reached Forsaken Legacy Realms boss room, do you wish to enter? Yes, no. Glancing at the prompt in front of him, Arthur hesitated slightly. What happens if I press no? Do I get teleported out of the dungeon? Will I lose the opportunity? He muttered out loud, mainly to himself. After thinking about it for a while, he couldn't press no. I can't lose out on this opportunity, this is my chance to be different, I will take it, I can't risk being removed from this dungeon. He pressed, yes. Entering the boss's room, the level of difficulty has increased from normal to hell dive. What the fuck? Arthur swore as he was teleported into the boss's room. His eyes widened as he took in the sight before him. In the center of the vast room, stood a throne. The shadowed seat seemed almost to pulse with the presence of its own. The throne was grand yet haunting, crafted from an obsidian-like material that absorbed all light. It was as though the throne itself told a story. Upon the throne rested a skeleton, upright and with a presence that couldn't be ignored, its figure unnervingly still. The bony hand rested on what remained of its cheek as if frozen in an eternal state of contemplation. The skull tilted slightly to one side, empty eye sockets seeming to gaze out into the room as though seeing beyond the physical, peering into something. Arthur's eyes scanned the room, and he couldn't suppress the creeping unease settling over him. How can something look so alive yet dead at the same time? He thought, his gaze lingering on the skeleton resting on the throne. How is it still sitting like that? Arthur wondered, feeling the hairs on the back of his neck rise. Arthur kept looking around the room, noticing the weird circular arrangement of candles lining the walls, each flame giving him the creeps. What kind of place is this? He thought, his gaze snapping back to the throne. The skeleton hadn't moved, but it didn't need to. Where is the boss? He thought, as he glanced around the room one more time before it clicked. Turning his head slowly to the skeleton in front of him, worrying that his thought might be correct. And it was. The skeleton's expression, which was unreadable, slowly formed into a creepy smile that made his heart beat faster than a drum on a caravan day. No, no. There is no way, I'm fighting this thing. Plus, how the hell can a skeleton even smile? He said as he watched it slowly rise from its throne, or what he thought it was. Chapter 17, New Summon, 2? S Subordinate, Epic Boss, Level, 5 health points, 500, details, a powerful being. He had been waiting in this room for the past hundreds of years, waiting for a person worthy of his emperor's forsaken legacy. Looking at the boss's stats in front of him, Arthur gulped loudly. 500 health points. He muttered. Honestly. Why don't you make him immortal? Because what in the world am I mean to do with my damage? He said, in frustration, glancing at his own stats after leveling up to level 3. Race, human, ID, fateless, level 3, class, none, talent, primordial summoner, SSS, lucky, SSS, summons, 2 out of 3, health points, 70, mana points, 110, magical damage, 11, physical damage, 4, damage resistance, 7, attributes, strength 4, agility 7, vitality 7, intelligence 11, skills, none, attribute points, 2, skill points, 2, equipment, dagger, rare, backpack, uncommon. I can only do 4 to 8 damage to him after every attack depending on whether it's a critical hit or not, and I need to land at least 100 of those attacks to kill this skeleton. He muttered silently, as he looked at the cat in front of him grimly. Is she going to make a move? He thought. Looking at the cat, he hooked his head. Doesn't seem like it. He decided to ignore her for now and focused on what was in front of him. Hank was on his shoulder, his eyes focused on the skeletal monster in front of them. Hank, I need you to do the same thing as usual. We will both attack at different intervals. We will keep making him change aggression so he wouldn't be able to hit one of us directly. Okay? He said, his voice urgent as he realized they didn't have much time before the skeleton was going to start attacking. You think I will wait for you to power up like some idiot? He mused as he darted forward, his dagger flashing in an arc as it struck the skeleton's side. -6 health point. Nice one, Hank. He called as Hank swooped down, slashing the skeletal figure with his talons before taking to the air again, taking its aggression away from Arthur. -8 health point. The skeleton swayed, turning its hollow eye sockets toward Hank in what might have been an irritation. Arthur smirked, his confidence growing with every successful attack they did. They were working in perfect sync, alternating their attacks and keeping the boss off balance. The skeletal figure's bony hand swung out in a slow attempt to retaliate, but Arthur easily sidestepped the attack. This is almost too easy, Arthur muttered under his breath, feeling excited about the reward he was going to receive. He tightened his grip on the dagger, waiting for another opening as Hank circled above, waiting for his next strike. The boss's health points dropped under their constant attacks. -7 health point, -6 health point, -10 health point, critical. Its health bar ticked lower and lower until... Nice, Hank, we are halfway through his health bar. Just repeat the same steps again, and we can enjoy the rewards. Arthur couldn't stop the grin that spread across his face. He felt unstoppable. You are nothing compared to me and Hank, you little piles of bones. He taunted, circling the skeleton with a swagger that hadn't been there at the start of the fight. You can act all mysterious on that dusty throne of yours, but when it comes to fighting, you're nothing but an old bone. Hank let out a triumphant shriek, diving down for another hit as Arthur stepped in close to land another blow himself. The boss staggered back under their assault, its frame rattling with each strike. But then everything changed. The ground beneath Arthur's feet trembled violently, the tremor filling the whole room. The candles lining the walls flickered and swayed, their light bending and twisting in erratic motion. Pebbles fell from the ceiling, clattering against the floor as the room seemed to collapse. What's happening? Arthur muttered, his grin vanishing as his confidence turned into unease. He instinctively took a few steps back, putting some distance between himself and the boss, his eyes darting around the shaking room. Even Hank faltered, flapping his wings hard to stay in the air. A notification appeared in front of him, the words glowing ominously. S Subordinate, Epic Boss, has entered an enraged state, some intelligence has been restored. Attack power has doubled, and health points have been reduced by half. Arthur's heart sank as the skeletal figure began to move differently. Its motions were no longer sluggish and predictable. It carried a sharpness and power that hadn't been there before. The hollow eye sockets that had once felt empty now seemed to burn with a faint, eerie light as if a fragment of the being it once was had stirred awake. What is that light in its eye sockets? He thought, as he glanced at the faint, black flame in the boss's eye socket. Oh, no. No, no, no. Arthur exclaimed, clutching his dagger tightly as he backed away further. This wasn't part of the plan. It was meant to be an easy win, and an amazing reward. The skeleton slowly straightened, standing taller than before, its bony frame exuding an aura of menace that made the room feel colder. It turned its head toward Arthur with an unnerving motion, the faint light in eye sockets locking onto him. Then, with a sudden burst of speed that Arthur hadn't seen coming, it lunged. Arthur barely managed to leap out of the way as the skeleton's massive, bony hand smashed into the ground where he'd been standing a moment before. The force of the impact cracked the stone floor, sending splinters of debris flying in every direction. 10 health point Hank. Keep it distracted. Arthur shouted, his voice filled with panic. 10 health point lost, and I haven't even been hit directly. I don't want to find out how much I would have lost if I was hit directly. I might be even dead. The hawk let out a sharp cry and dove at the skeleton's head, claws slashing at its exposed skull. -8 health point. The skeleton didn't flinch. Instead, it lashed out with a speed that caught even Hank off guard, its bony hand narrowly missing the hawk as he swerved out of reach. Arthur felt his stomach churn at the evolution of the boss. This isn't good, Arthur muttered, gripping his dagger tightly as he tried to come up with a new strategy to counter the enraged boss. Chapter 18, Hidden Class, Shadow Monarch, SSS. Arthur's dagger trembled in his hand, his breaths ragged and shallow as he lunged at the skeleton for what felt like the 100th time. Each swing of his weapon came slower, his movements losing their precision with every passing second. The once crisp coordination between him and Hank was no longer there. Instead, it was a desperate, disjointed array of strikes, each one barely keeping the skeletal monster at bay. The boss, now fully enraged, moved with terrifying speed, its bony limbs lashing out with enough force to shatter the stone beneath their feet. Hank swooped down for another attack, his talons raking across the boss's exposed ribcage. -8 health point, but the skeleton countered, its massive hand swinging upward and grazing Hank's wing. Hank screeched, veering off his course, his feathers trailing behind him as he flapped furiously to stay airborne after the attack. -15 health point. Hank, hang in there. Arthur shouted, his voice hoarse. He could feel the change of aura in the air. His own body screamed in protest, bruises forming where the skeleton had landed scraping blows, and his left shoulder throbbed from narrowly dodging a strike that had smashed into the wall behind him. The skeleton was relentless, each attack more aggressive than the last. Arthur barely managed to roll away as its massive hand slammed into the ground beside him, sending shards of stone flying into his face. Blood trickled down his temple, stinging his eyes as he scrambled to his feet. This is bad. This is really bad, he muttered, his voice trembling. He risked a glance at Hank, who was circling above, his flight unsteady unlike before. The hawk had taken too many hits for him, to the point where his movements were sluggish, his shrieks tinged with desperation. Arthur tried to force himself forward, his grip on the dagger tightening as he aimed for another attack. But the skeleton anticipated him this time, its bony hand sweeping sideways and catching Arthur square inches the ribs. Pain exploded through his side as he was thrown against the wall, collapsing in a heap. Shit! He gasped, clutching his side as the skeleton loomed over him. His dagger had slipped from his grasp, clattering to the ground a few feet away. He crawled backwards, his vision swimming. I shouldn't have been cocky. Damn it. I got too greedy. Hank let out a piercing shriek, diving at the skeleton with all the strength he had left. His claws struck the boss's skull, but the skeleton retaliated with a swift, brutal swipe that caught Hank mid-flight. The hawk let out a final, heart-wrenching cry as he plummeted to the ground and turned into particles. No! Arthur shouted, his voice breaking as he watched Hank hit the floor with a sickening thud. A prompt appeared before his eyes. Your C-rank summon Hank has died. Hank will respawn in 24 hours. Arthur's heart sank. Damn it, I'm done for. He muttered, his back against the wall as the skeleton advanced. He closed his eyes, waiting for the inevitable strike that would end it all. Every muscle in his body screamed at him to run, to fight, but he was too drained. Too broken. He waited. And waited. But the strike never came. Instead, there was a deafening crash, followed by sounds of cracks and creaks. Arthur opened his eyes hesitantly, his vision blurry. His breath caught in his throat as he took in the scene before him. The skeleton was no longer standing. Its massive frame lay crumpled on the floor, its once formidable presence reduced to a pile of broken bones scattered across the room. A flood of notifications appeared before him. Ding. You have killed S subordinate, epic boss. Ding. You have cleared the hidden realm, Forsaken Legacy. Ding. 2x reward is granted, the reward is being altered. Ding. You have gained the hidden class, Shadow Monarch, SSS. Arthur stared at the prompts in disbelief, his mind struggling to process what had just happened. What? He murmured, his voice barely audible. How? His gaze darted around the room, searching for an explanation for what was going on. That's when he saw it. Neko was a few feet away, her tail flicking lazily as she groomed her paw. At first glance, she looked completely indifferent, as though none of this had concerned her in the slightest. But as Arthur's eyes fell on her tail, his heart nearly stopped. One of the skeleton's feet bones was beneath Neko's tail, as if the skeleton had stepped on it as he went forward to attack Arthur. Arthur's mind reeled, piecing together the scene. Did Neko kill it because the boss stepped on its flipping tail? He thought, cold sweat forming on his forehead. The absurdity of it left him speechless. He rubbed his eyes, half expecting the scene to change, but it didn't. The skeleton's remains were still scattered across the floor, and Neko remained completely unbothered, her tail flicking slightly as though this were all beneath her. Arthur let out a shaky laugh, part relief and part disbelief. No wonder she's considered a primordial summon, he muttered, his tone containing both admiration and exasperation at the same time. Neko gave him a single glance, her golden eyes half-lidded as if to say, "What are you looking at?" before resuming her grooming. Arthur shook his head, pushing himself to his feet. His body ached, and his mind was still spinning from the sheer chaos of the fight. But the rush of adrenaline was quickly replaced by curiosity as he remembered the slew of notifications he hadn't properly read. He opened his interface, scrolling through the system prompts. His eyes widened as he took in the rewards. Hidden class, Shadow Monarch, SSS. Is it so easy to get an SSS rank class like that? Isn't it meant to be an endgame type of thing? He thought as he glanced at the notification in front of him. I'll figure this out later, he muttered, glancing at Neko, who was now lounging amidst the broken bones. For now, I need to summon these old bones to fight for me. He is so flipping strong. Especially with that skill. As he said that, his face twisted in shock. There is no way I forgot that I could summon a beast to help me fight against that old pile of bones over here. I'm so dumb. He shook his head, feeling like an idiot. Chapter 19, New Summon. Sunless looking at the notifications, Arthur's expression quickly turned into a wide grin. Magic wand, very rare, has been dropped. Large backpack, rare, has been dropped. 1 gold coin has been dropped. Wow, I'm rich. Inspecting the items, he was very pleased. The rare backpack was able to hold 50 items inside of it, which meant that it was 10 times better than the uncommon ones. Thankfully he dropped me a bigger backpack. It got so annoying placing a backpack inside of a backpack and so on. He muttered as he moved his items from the uncommon backpacks into the rare ones. Magic wand, very rare. Description, grants plus 10% intelligence when equipped, also increases spellcasting rate. That's amazing, that increase is kind of huge. He muttered as he placed it in the backpack. I can't use it now anyway, since I don't have any offensive or defensive spells. Race, human, ID, fateless, level, 3, class, Shadow Monarch, SSS, talent, Primordial Summoner, SSS, lucky, SSS, summons, 2 out of 3, health points, 70, mana points, 110, magical damage, 11, physical damage, 4, damage resistance, 7, attributes, strength 4, agility 7, vitality 7, intelligence 11, skills, none, attribute points, 2, skill points, 2, equipment, dagger, rare, backpack, rare, not bad, time to try awakening this old pile of bones. He almost killed me, Arthur muttered as he shook his head in disbelief. It's fine though, I will only get stronger from here. It's just a newbie mistake, I won't repeat it again. Hopefully, walking up to the small hill that was made out of bones, Arthur reached his hand above it and muttered. Awaken. What followed was far from ordinary. Dark energy swirled up from the bones like a storm, a vortex of shadow and power engulfing the skeletal remains. The air grew heavier, and the sound of a low, ominous wind reverberated through the room. Arthur instinctively stepped back, his eyes widening. What is going on? He thought, his heart pounding as the portal that normally summoned his beasts opened below the pile of bones and engulfed it. The portal pulsed, and the swirling energy grew more chaotic until, with a sudden eruption, a large, dense swirl of shadow burst outward. Arthur shielded his face with his arm, feeling the force of the release as the dark energy coalesced into a solid form. From the swirling darkness, a skeletal hand reached out, clawing its way through the portal. Its bony fingers grasped at the edges, pulling itself free. Soon, a fully formed skeleton emerged, its frame the same as before, around the size and shape of a normal human. Arthur stared in awe as the skeleton stood before him, its hollow eye sockets glowing faintly with a dim light. But then, to his utter shock, the skeleton bent down onto one knee, bowing its head low in a display of submission. Huh? Arthur muttered, completely baffled by what he was witnessing. His voice cracked slightly as he took a hesitant step forward towards the skeleton. The very creature that had nearly killed him now kneeling as if acknowledging him as its master. This has never happened before. Arthur thought, his mind racing. Neither Neko nor Hank had done this during their awakenings. Neko had strutted out like she owned the world, and Hank had been more neutral. But this was reverence, something entirely new. He glanced at Neko, who sat nearby with her usual indifferent expression, grooming her paw as usual. Okay, bad example, he muttered to himself, rolling his eyes. His thoughts flicked to Hank, who listened to orders but didn't show this kind of behavior. What's different here? Arthur's eyes darted to his system interface as a sudden realization struck him. Wait, is it because this is the third effect of my talent? Talent effect number 3, you are able to summon any beast you have killed as your own summon. Maybe the beasts I summon after killing are different. After thinking about it for a while, it made sense to him. The beasts that he kills would harbor ill intentions if you revived them, so to counter that the talent seems to make them loyal. Sudden new notifications appeared in front of his eyes. You have summoned S subordinate. They are now completely and utterly loyal to you, they will do as you instruct them without any fail. You have the right to name them. Would you like to name S subordinate, yes or no, completely loyal? That's a twist I wasn't expecting, but hey. I'm not complaining. Pressing yes, a new notification gave him the option of either saying it or typing it. Let me think. He muttered, as his hands rested on his chin pondering. Alright, I think I got it. He nodded his head, looking at the skeleton that was kneeling in front of him. Since you seem to have an affinity to shadows, I will call you Sunless, name confirmed. Your summoned beast S subordinate is now called Sunless. Time to see your status, big boy. Glancing at Sunless's stats, Arthur's mouth dropped. Race, undead, ID, Sunless, level, 5, talent, darkness, A, health points, 120, mana points, 90, magical damage, 11, physical damage, 9, damage resistance, 12, attributes, strength 11, agility 6, vitality 12, intelligence 9, skills, rage, epic, attribute points, 0, skill points, 0. Not only does he have a knee rank talent, he also has a damn epic skill. Arthur's voice crackled, as he looked at his summoned skills. Looking at the stats, Arthur realized a few things. The beasts he summons after killing will have the same level they had before death, which means they won't remain at his level. Although, he wasn't sure how they would level up. Would he start leveling up with me when I hit level 5? He asked himself but found no answer, so he ignored it. He compared Neko's status screen, and Sunless's and he frowned upon the difference. Neko has 2, very rare, skills while Sunless has 1, epic. This doesn't make sense. Why does Sunless have a higher skill rank than a primordial beast? It might be due to his level. It seems like I need to get to level 5 as soon as possible, he thought, after some thinking. Chapter 20, Threat. Time to check out the Shadow Monarch class, Arthur muttered, as he pressed on it. Class, Shadow Monarch, SSS, #talent effect 1, locked, #talent effect 2, locked. Note, you do not meet the requirement of level 5. Alright, now it seems like I need to level up without a doubt, Arthur said as he decided to leave the hidden realm. As he approached the portal that appeared after Neko killed Sunless, his eyes spotted something shining on the throne. What's that thing shining? Approaching the throne, he spotted a pure black ring with a small gem on it. A ring? He muttered as he picked it up. As soon as his hands touched the ring seemed to melt and then formed on his ring finger. Ring of Darkness, legendary, has chosen you as its host. Ring of Darkness has been permanently bound to you. It will not drop as loot no matter the cause. Ring of Darkness, description, greater than increases all attributes by 20%, greater than dark-based skills deal 50% more damage. What the hell is this overpowered artifact? Taking a glance at Neko, his smile widened. The lucky SSS talent is actually insane. I've been getting the most overpowered things back to back like it's garbage. If I was able to bring back things from the real world, I would have rewarded that lazy cat with some delicious cat food. But alas, that's impossible, he thought, as he shook his head. After finding out that he almost missed a legendary grade item, he decided to check every inch of the boss's room before he left. He groaned, dragging his hand down his face as if it could erase the memory of wasting 30 minutes. Seriously? 30 minutes? For absolutely nothing. As he stepped into the portal, he was teleported back into the cave. Global announcement, player has successfully cleared the first secret realm. Global announcement, player has. Global announcement. The announcement echoed 3 times before it finally stopped, and players around both worlds heard the announcement. General Adam. Why are you frowning? Asked the reporter, as she watched the general's face twist randomly. Adam did not respond for a few seconds, as if completely immersed in a different world. There was a global announcement to all players. Adam finally exhaled, his shoulders drooping under an invisible weight. His gaze lingered somewhere beyond the reporter, unfocused and distant, as if he were seeing something only he could understand. "General Adam." The reporter pressed, her voice tinged with curiosity and unease. "The so-called global announcement, does it mean something significant?" Adam blinked, returning to the present with a sharp inhale. His expression hardened, his lips thinning into a line. "It changes everything," he muttered, more to himself than to her. Adam's fingers tapped a restless rhythm against his thigh as the echoes of the announcement replayed in his mind. He turned to his aide, his voice a low rumble barely audible over the murmurs in the room. "A monster or a hero," he said, his tone grim. "We can't afford to wait until the last second to find out which." The reporter, still hovering nearby, caught the edge of his words, her brows knitting in confusion. "General, are you suggesting?" Adam cut her off with a raised hand, his gaze sharp and unwavering. "This is the end of the interview. Have a nice day," he said, as he gestured for the soldiers to escort the journalists away. After the journalists left, Adam called a meeting of the highest order. "A player has just cleared a secret realm, and the Armageddon has just started. This person is talented. Too talented, he can't be left to do as he pleases. He is a force of his own, especially since the information we received about the world merging. His powers will break the scale, we need to do something about him immediately." A person in the meeting said, agreeing with Adam. "The world doesn't have the luxury of patience anymore," Adam said, his voice cold and resolute. "Prepare the task force. I want every resource we have to track this player. If they obey and listen, then they are a hero. If they don't—" He paused, his eyes narrowing, and his voice growing colder. "Then they're a monster," he continued, each syllable deliberate, like a blade drawn slow. "And monsters should be dealt with before they grow too strong." The air in the command center turned grim, the generals exchanged uneasy glances. Adam didn't need to elaborate on what he meant. Everyone knew what dealt with meant in his hands. Arthur leaned against the wall of the cave, his grin refusing to fade as he looked at the coins he had. Coins: gold, 1 silver, 21 bronze, 3. He rubbed his fingers together absent-mindedly as if he could already feel the coins he'd earned, even though they existed only as numbers in a virtual interface. "Rich," he thought, the word echoing in his head like a triumphant anthem. "I'm actually rich now. Not just scraping by, not just surviving. I've got enough to do something real." The thought of Charlotte came to him immediately, her fragile smile and tired eyes etched into his memory. For so long, everything he'd done was to make sure they could survive. "I can finally get us out of that hellhole," he muttered to himself, a flicker of determination crossing his face. A proper place. Somewhere clean, warm, safe. No more trash cans as heaters. The vision of a small apartment began to form in his mind. Nothing extravagant, just a cozy place where they could rest. "And her treatment," Arthur whispered, his voice softer now. "The money he'd earned should be enough for her treatment. This is $12,103, not including the items that I will be selling later." "Finally," he muttered, his grin growing wider. "Finally, I can do something." He pushed himself off the wall, stretching his arms and rolling his shoulders. Arthur took a deep breath, his excitement bubbling over. "All right," he said with a wide grin, his voice echoing slightly in the cave. "Time to get even richer by selling those items. Let's go, Neko." He waited for a moment, expecting to see the lazy cat trailing behind him. But when no soft paw steps followed, he frowned. "Neko?" he called, glancing over his shoulder. The cave was empty except for himself. "Where the hell did that cat go?" he muttered, scanning the corners of the cave. Shaking his head, he stepped outside the cave to look for her. As his eyes adjusted to the light, he spotted her a few feet away, lying sprawled across a smooth rock at the cave's edge. Her white fur practically glowed in the sunlight as she stretched lazily, completely unconcerned with anything else around her. Arthur sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Of course. Why am I even surprised?" he muttered under his breath. Walking over to her, he folded his arms and stared down at the cat. "You're sunbathing? After all, that just happened, and you're out here like nothing in the world matters?" Neko opened one golden eye, glancing at him briefly before closing it again, clearly uninterested in his complaints. While he imagined building a peaceful life, others were labeling him a potential threat, a monster to be monitored or eliminated. Chapter 21, Selling the Items. Arthur moved steadily through the forest, his dagger flashing in quick arcs as he dispatched another corroded rabbit that leapt at him from the underbrush. -12 health point, ding, you have leveled up to level 4, all attribute points will be increased by 1, you have gained 1 free attribute point and 1 skill point. Arthur's lips curved into a satisfied grin as the notification flashed before him. "Nice," he muttered, glancing at his stats. "Looks like the boss fight gave me so much experience that I was only a few kills away from leveling up again. Race, human, ID, fateless, level, 4. Class, Shadow Monarch, SSS, Talent, Primordial Summoner, SSS, Lucky, SSS, Summons, 3 out of 4, Health Points, 80, Mana Points, 120, Magical Damage, 12, Physical Damage, 5, Damage Resistance, 8, Attributes, Strength 5, Agility 8, Vitality 8, Intelligence 12, all attributes plus 20%, skills, none, attribute points, 3, skill points, 3, equipment, Ring of Darkness, Legendary, Dagger, Rare, Backpack, Rare. He rolled his shoulders, feeling stronger energy coursing through his body. Only one more level to go until level 5, he said to himself. Once I unlock my class skills, my combat power is going to skyrocket. Arthur stepped through the gates of the spawning village, the hustle and bustle of other players talking to NPCs and each other. Behind him, Neko walked along, her tail swishing lazily as she glanced around with her usual indifferent expression. However, her presence didn't go unnoticed this time, as people were now calmer than when they first started the game. They weren't as paranoid and started to enjoy the place. "Oh my god, look at that cute cat!" one female player exclaimed, pointing toward Neko with wide eyes. "What's this adorable fluffball doing here?" Another added, crouching down slightly as if to get a better look. "Look at those cheeks," the first girl player said again, practically squealing. "They're so fluffy, I just want to squeeze them." A male player nearby, raising a skeptical eyebrow, said, "Pause there. Are you into bestiality? Because that sounded nuts." The female player straightened up immediately, her expression twisting into a frown as she rounded on him. "Get your head out of the gutter, moron. I'm talking about its face cheeks, not the ones you can't get." The nearby group of male players burst into laughter, one of them clutching his stomach as he doubled over. "She just called you a virgin, man." "No," he wheezed, slapping his knee. Arthur, who had been half listening, couldn't help but chuckle at the exchange, though he quickly shook his head and moved past them, suppressing a grin. Neko, for her part, acted as though the commotion had nothing to do with her, walking on without so much as a glance in their direction. Arthur found an empty spot near the village's main plaza. He quickly pulled out all the uncommon items he had and began laying them out one by one. Armor pieces, swords, and various uncommon items were on display. "All right," he called out, raising his voice to attract attention. "Come one, come all. Uncommon items for sale at 25% off the shop price. I've got armor, swords, backpacks, you name it, I've got it." A small crowd began to gather almost immediately, their curiosity piqued by the discounted items. No more common items, no more bad loot drops. You can buy uncommon items at a price lower than the shops by 25%, you can finally kill the monsters that have been hunting you. Don't miss the offer," he shouted, as his voice started gathering players. Arthur's eyes scanned the faces, gauging their interest as he leaned back with an air of confidence. "Time to make some more money," he thought, a grin tugging at the corner of his lips as he prepared to sell items. Arthur stood above his stall, his arms crossed, as a male player stepped forward. The man's username, her chair, floated above his head in bright text. "Can I have the backpack, uncommon?" her chair asked, his tone polite but eager. "Sure," Arthur replied with a warm smile. "That'll be 10 silver coins." Her chair's face twisted in confusion. "Wait, what? But the price tag says it's only 5 silver coins. Why are you selling it to me for 10? Arthur shrugged nonchalantly, his expression that of indifference. "Because I changed my mind. Either buy it or don't." His attention wandered, clearly done with the conversation. Her chair let out a frustrated sigh, glancing at the crowd forming around the stall. "Fine," he said, his shoulders slumping. "I'll pay 10. My girlfriend needs one of these anyway." Arthur smirked inwardly as her chair sent over a trade invite. "Player, her chair has sent you 10 silver coins." Arthur accepted the trade, sliding the backpack toward the player. "Pleasure doing business with you," he said with a nod. Next. Another player stepped up, this one with the username Kitsune. "Hey, can I get the other backpack, uncommon?" he asked. "Of course, brother," Arthur said, his tone friendly and casual. "That'll be 5 silver coins." Her chair, who hadn't walked away yet, froze mid-step. His jaw dropped as he turned back to Arthur, his face a mixture of shock and outrage. "What? You just told me it was 10 silver coins." Arthur glanced at him, an amused smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Yeah, well, I sell it to whoever I want, for whatever price I want. Did I force you to buy it?" He raised an eyebrow. "I don't think that's possible." The crowd around them erupted into muffled laughter, several players stifling grins as they watched the exchange. Her chair's face flushed red as he gritted his teeth. "But that's..." Arthur cut him off, his grin widening. So why don't you go and let Gorlock the Destroyer sit on you since you're apparently her chair? The crowd exploded into laughter, even Kitsune chuckled as he handed over his silver coins for the backpack. Her chair stomped off in a huff, muttering under his breath as the crowd's laughter followed him. The reason Arthur did this was because it was these types of players that always aggravated him in games when he used to play games before, so he decided to return the favor. Chapter 22, Getting Rich, Rich Customers. Arthur had just finished counting the silver coins from his latest sale when a shadow loomed over his stall. The chatter of the surrounding players died down as a man stepped forward. His presence was overwhelming, his aura almost tangible as it seemed to dwarf everyone around him. He stood tall, his gaze calm but piercing, and his voice carried some authority that was hidden but obvious. "Hello," the man said, his voice deep and measured. "I'd like to buy all the items in your store." Arthur raised an eyebrow, meeting the man's eyes. This wasn't the first time he dealt with someone trying to flex their wealth, but something about this guy felt different. Still, business was business. "Sure," Arthur said with a nod, keeping his tone casual. "That'll be 80 silver coins." The crowd around them erupted into murmurs, the sudden surge of interest pulling more players closer to the stall. "Did he just say 80 silver coins?" Someone muttered, their voice tinged with disbelief. That's $8,000 in real money. Is he insane?" Another whispered, their eyes wide as they stared at the tall man. "This is the rich folks' world," someone else said, shaking their head. "We poor folks can never understand it. If I had even one uncommon item, I'd sell it for a few $100s, a player sighed. But all I've been getting are common drops. How does this guy have so many to sell?" Arthur smirked slightly at the chatter but didn't let it distract him. He glanced at Neko, who was lounging nearby, completely uninterested in the commotion. Before the deal could be finalized, another figure barged through the crowd, his voice booming over the noise. "Excuse me, boss," the new man said, his tone laced with excitement. "I'll buy everything you have. I'll pay 1 gold coin." The crowd gasped audibly, their whispers escalating into outright chatter. "A gold coin? Did he say a gold coin? That's worth, what, $10,000? Wait a second," someone said, narrowing their eyes. "This guy looks familiar. Isn't that the owner of Soft Micro?" Another player let out a weary sigh. "The rich will always have privilege, no matter where they go. Even in another world, they're still above us." "Calm down, Mr. Communism is in my blood," a nearby player retorted with a smirk. "This guy worked hard for his money. It's not like it's just daddy's cash, and even if it was, his dad worked for it. He has every right to spend it." Arthur barely suppressed a chuckle as the crowd's debate grew louder. Turning his attention back to the two potential buyers, he crossed his arms and smiled. "All right," he said. "I guess it's time for a bidding war, huh? Who's ready to pay more?" Arthur's grin widened. This was about to get interesting. The man's tone became sharper, but still that of respect. "Mr. Gates," he said, addressing the man from Soft Micro. "I'm Lieutenant Adam. This purchase is intended to strengthen our soldiers in this world. I'm sure you understand how crucial that is." His words carried a weight that silenced the murmurs around the stall. There was something in his gaze, something hidden, that was only understood by him and Gates. The players surrounding Arthur's stall began chattering again, trying to piece together what was happening. "What does he mean by that?" one player whispered, glancing at his friends. Another snorted. "No, even the soldiers are too busy leveling up in a game instead of protecting the borders. These are the same soldiers who start crying when they don't get a veteran's discount at MC Don." A player nearby rolled his eyes and snapped back, "Shut up, you idiot. First of all, they just entered the game world, so all the time before this, they were protecting you. If they get discounts or benefits here, they've earned it. Don't be a moron." Arthur, watching the exchange between Lieutenant Adam and Gates, frowned as his mind raced. What does he mean by that? He wondered, the lieutenant's words and expression gnawing at his thoughts. "I knew there was something about this world that felt off, but this confirms it. They're hiding something from the public. But what?" He made a mental note to dig deeper when he had the chance. Gates nodded respectfully to the lieutenant, his demeanor shifting from casual to cooperative. "Oh, Lieutenant Adam," Gates said, his voice calm and measured. "I didn't realize this was an army expenditure. Of course, I won't contest it. I just need a few supplies for myself." Lieutenant Adam offered a faint smile. "Thank you, Mr. Gates. Your contribution won't go unnoticed." Turning to Arthur, Adam initiated a trade, his focus now entirely on the young merchant. "Lieutenant Adam 4 would like to trade, yes or no?" Arthur pressed, "Yes," and the trade interface opened. Lieutenant Adam 4 deposited 80 silver coins, Fateless deposited helmet, uncommon, backpack, uncommon, Both confirmed the trade with a press of yes, and the transaction was completed smoothly. "Thank you for your cooperation," Adam said, his tone more personable now. "Can we add each other as friends? It would be useful for future trades." Arthur nodded, his curiosity about the lieutenant piqued. "Sure. Lieutenant Adam 4 has sent you a friend request. Accept or decline." Arthur pressed, "Accept." "Lieutenant Adam 4 has become your friend." With the trade complete, Adam turned to Gates and gestured politely. "I'll leave the rest to you." Gates smiled warmly and stepped forward. "Well then, I suppose it's my turn." He initiated a trade, selecting a handful of items from Arthur's inventory. Player Gates would like to trade, yes or no. Arthur pressed, yes, and Gates deposited 10 silver coins for a few items. "Don't forget me when you get more good items," Gates said with a chuckle as the trade finalized. He sent Arthur a friend request, which Arthur quickly accepted. "Gates has become your friend." Both Gates and Lieutenant Adam offered parting words before departing. "Don't forget us when you have better gear, I will give you the best price," Gates said with a wink. "Your help to the military will be rewarded," Adam added, his tone serious but warm. "Thanks for cooperating with us in the future." Arthur watched them disappear into the crowd. What's really going on in this game? He thought, his fingers tapping lightly on his arm. Chapter 23, Awkward Position. Arthur glanced at the total coins he had on his interface, his grin widening so much it almost hurt his cheeks. Coins: gold, 2, silver, 21, bronze, 3. "This is what I mean by grinding," he exclaimed, clenching his fists triumphantly. "I just made $22,103 in less than a day." The excitement bubbled up inside him, and he almost leapt into the air, his entire body tingling with exhilaration. He turned to Neko, who sat lazily on the edge of the stall, watching him with half-lidded eyes. "I'll be back later," Arthur said. "I need to log out." Neko blinked once, unimpressed, and went back to ignoring him. Arthur didn't care. He quickly logged out, not bothering to deal with her. In the toilet, Arthur froze as Charlotte, still half asleep, was on the toilet seat with her head down. Her head slowly moved up as her big eyes blinked at him, barely comprehending his presence. For a brief moment, she seemed to stare right through him, her expression soft but confused. Arthur's heart pounded as the awkward scenario unfolded. No way. There is no way this is actually happening right now. Charlotte's hand moved slightly as if she was about to use sign language to say something, but she stopped, clearly too tired to do so. Instead, her brows furrowed faintly, as though questioning his presence with her eyes alone. Arthur felt his face heat up, his thoughts spiraling. He stammered, his voice low. "I'm sorry," he muttered and immediately turned his head away and logged back into the game, vanishing from the toilet, leaving Charlotte speechless as she shook her head. Arthur reappeared in the game world. He leaned against a tree in the player village. His face was still burning red as he buried it in his hands. "What the hell was that?" he groaned, his voice muffled. Out of all the possible moments, why now? What kind of cosmic joke is this? He paced around in a small circle as his thoughts raced. Did she even realize what happened? He wondered. She was so out of it. Maybe she'll think it was just a weird dream. The thought gave him a sliver of hope, though it didn't erase the sheer awkwardness of the meeting. Arthur sighed deeply, running a hand through his hair. After pacing for 10 minutes, he finally mustered up the courage to return back to the toilet. 5 minutes should be enough for her to finish. She was inside before I appeared after all. Okay, calm down. Just check if the coast is clear first. Simple. Teleporting back to the hospital, Arthur cracked open his eyes to check the bathroom. It was empty. He exhaled in relief. "All right, she's gone," he muttered. "Time to get out of here before something else happens." Arthur groaned, rubbing his temples. Okay, calm down. Just leave and pretend like nothing happened." She was dreaming, yup. She definitely was dreaming. Taking a deep breath, he opened the bathroom door just a crack and peeked out. Charlotte was back in her hospital bed, her back turned to him as she faced the window. She appeared to be resting quietly, her small frame still. "Perfect," Arthur whispered. He crept out of the bathroom, moving as silently as possible. His steps were as slow as a snail, each one feeling like it took an eternity. He kept his eyes on Charlotte, holding his breath as he neared the door. Damn it, I wasn't this sneaky in the boss room. Finally, he slipped out and gently closed the room door behind him. Once in the hallway, he let out a huge sigh of relief, leaning against the wall. Okay, phase 1 complete, he muttered to himself, his heart still racing. After collecting himself, Arthur took a deep breath and straightened his posture. He knocked on the door to Charlotte's room, acting as if he just arrived there now. He waited a few seconds before stepping in, putting on his best casual smile. "Hey, Charlotte," he said, his voice light and cheerful. "I just got here." How are you feeling? Charlotte turned in her bed and looked at him with a soft expression. Arthur stood there awkwardly for a moment before finally relaxing. She didn't say anything about it. Maybe she really thought it was a dream. He sighed inwardly. His thoughts were interrupted as her hands started moving. Looking at the signs she was giving, Arthur's face paled lightly. Charlotte, don't act like you didn't just peep on me, pervert. Arthur froze in place, as all the possible responses he was going to give failed to render in his mind when he needed them the most. I don't know what you are talking about, Charlotte, you were probably dreaming. He said, acting nonchalantly, as his heartbeats accelerated. Still, as he sat down in the chair by her bedside, a single thought burned in his mind. I will never, ever log out in a bathroom again. Charlotte's hand once again moved, playing with Arthur's heartstrings after every sign. Charlotte, I heard the door close. I know you tried to act as if you just arrived. Stop hiding it. It makes you more guilty. How is that possible? It must have been a nurse. I just arrived, Charlotte. You must be sleepy. I think you should sleep a bit more. I will leave you to it. He chuckled nervously, getting up from his chair. Deny, and once again deny. No matter how shameless it sounds, it's not as shameless as the accusation. Arthur thought. Charlotte's hand grabbed his as he got up. Sit down, she said using sign language. Boo! Arthur tried to respond, but he was quickly shut down. I was sleepy, I think I was daydreaming. Although she said that to him, she didn't believe it one bit. She said that because she realized that she teased him to his limit, anymore and Arthur might explode from embarrassment. Chapter 24, Terrible News. Arthur sat beside Charlotte. They spent their time together with light conversations. While she couldn't speak, her gestures and soft smiles spoke volumes. For over an hour, they spoke about memories, books, and even her thoughts on the hospital food. But then Charlotte made a gesture, her hands forming words slowly, her eyes carrying a tinge of curiosity. Why am I here? Arthur's heart sank, but he kept his expression calm. So they haven't told her yet, he thought grimly. He quickly diverted the topic, rambling about a funny memory from their childhood. Charlotte tilted her head, giving him a faint, knowing look, but didn't press the question further. A soft knock interrupted them, and the door opened to reveal the doctor. Arthur immediately recognized him. It was the same one who had given him the initial diagnosis. Hello, Mr. Fate. Miss Fate, the doctor said, giving a respectful nod to both of them. Arthur tensed. He had been dreading this moment. The doctor's serious expression left no room for hope of a false diagnosis. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, the doctor began, his tone gentle but firm. Unfortunately, our speculation was correct. Miss Fate has cancer. Arthur had braced himself for this, already knowing what was coming, but his eyes flicked to Charlotte, watching her reaction closely. She remained still, her expression unreadable. She didn't blink, didn't move, nothing. She isn't reacting at all? Arthur thought, his chest tightening with worry. Why isn't she reacting? Arthur's mind churned as he watched Charlotte's reaction, or lack thereof. Her face remained calm, her body unmoving, as though the news hadn't landed at all. Her eyes now stared past the doctor as though she hadn't even heard him. His chest tightened, his breath catching slightly. When people don't react to such bad news, there are only a few reasons. The first. His thoughts grew darker. Apostrophe. Is the most dangerous. They're hiding their grief, suppressing it so deeply that it festers inside, growing like a sickness. It doesn't go away. It slowly eats at them until it's too late. Arthur's fingers clenched into fists on his lap. He tried to dismiss the thought, but the fear lingered. What if it's already happening? The second reason isn't much better. His gaze flicked to her hands, still resting limply in her lap. Denial. The shock of the news is so great that the mind refuses to accept it as real. It's as if reality hasn't fully registered yet. He swallowed hard, fighting the wave of helplessness threatening to overwhelm him. The third reason. Accepting the truth but not understanding its consequences. Arthur studied her face, looking for any sign of comprehension. Does she realize what this means? Or is she just lost in it? And then there was the last possibility. The fourth reason. His thoughts hesitated before brushing it aside. Strong faith. Strong will. The kind of resolve that can't be broken no matter the circumstances. But that's so rare. And honestly, it's unlikely. Arthur's heart sank. He couldn't ignore the nagging fear that it was the first reason, hiding grief, burying it so deep that it couldn't be reached. That fear gnawed at him as he looked at his sister, his thoughts racing in circles. Charlotte. He thought, her name echoing like a plea in his mind. He wanted to reach out, to say something, anything that might pull her out of whatever storm was brewing inside. But his throat felt tight, the lump there making it impossible to speak. He blinked, his vision blurring slightly. If it is the first reason. If she's suppressing this. How am I supposed to help her? The question remained unanswered. The doctor cleared his throat, drawing Arthur's attention back. Unfortunately, he continued, his voice heavy, the cancer has spread extensively in Miss Fate's body. There is no cure for this stage. The words hit like a sledgehammer. Arthur's mind went blank for a moment, the world around him seeming to fade into a distant past. He blinked, his vision blurring slightly. His heart hammered in his chest as the weight of those words settled over him. No. No, this can't be real. His breathing quickened as his mind scrambled for an escape from this reality. This must be a mistake. He must be joking with me. His thoughts spiraled, each one sharper and heavier than the last. Not after surviving for so long. Not after enduring everything life has thrown at us. Not after I was finally able to crave a way. A way forward. His hands trembled slightly, and he quickly clenched them into fists to stop the shaking. He glanced at Charlotte again. She hadn't moved, her face still calm, her eyes unfocused as though she were gazing at something far away. It was unnerving. Arthur swallowed hard, forcing himself to speak. What are our options? He asked, his voice quieter than he intended. He hated how weak it sounded, hated the desperation that bled into his words. The doctor gave him a sympathetic look. There are treatments that can ease the symptoms and improve her quality of life, but they won't stop the progression. I'll leave you both to discuss this in private, and I'll check in later to go over the details. Arthur barely heard him leave. His gaze was fixed on Charlotte, searching her face for any sign of emotion, anything to let him know what she was feeling. But she remained quiet, her expression unchanging, her hands resting lightly in her lap. Charlotte, he said softly, the lump in his throat making his voice uneven. She turned her head slightly to look at him, her calm gaze meeting his. Her composure was unnerving, almost surreal. Arthur forced a small smile, though it felt like his face might crack from the effort. It's going to be okay, he said, his voice trembling despite his best efforts. It has to be okay, he thought desperately. It has to be. But as he sat there, the doctor's words pressed him down like an immovable mountain, threatening to crush the fragile hope he was clinging to. Chapter 25, A Promise, and Options. He looked at Charlotte, her face still calm, her silence deafening. The lump in his throat swelled so much it was hard to breathe, let alone say something meaningful. I have to be strong, he told himself, forcing his hands to stop trembling. I can't show weakness in front of her. If I break now, it will utterly destroy her. Taking a deep breath, he pushed himself to his feet and moved to sit beside her on the hospital bed. Gently, he reached out and took her hands in his, their warmth grounding him in the moment. Charlotte, he said, his voice soft but steady, look at me. Her gaze shifted to him slowly, her big eyes searching his face. Arthur tightened his grip on her hands as though it would somehow make his words more convincing. I promise you, he said, forcing his voice to stay firm despite the doubt gnawing at his heart, I will find a solution for this. The words he uttered felt like a gamble, a wager against the impossible, but he had to do it. He didn't know how he'd do it, but he couldn't let her see his fear. Even if I don't believe in myself completely, I have to make her believe. Remember, he continued, his voice gaining strength as he remembered a certain memory in the back of his mind. Do you remember how we were kicked out of our house? Left with nothing, no money, no food, no shelter? Her fingers twitched slightly in his grasp, and he saw the flicker of emotion cross her face. Slowly, she nodded. You asked me, he said, how we were going to survive. Charlotte's hands moved, her signing slower than usual. You said, she signed, we'll get through this. We'll survive. Arthur nodded, his grip on her hands tightening ever so slightly. Exactly, he said, his voice firmer than before. And did we not survive? Even though it wasn't much, even though it felt impossible at the time, we made it through. It's a miracle we're still here. Isn't it? Charlotte nodded again, her hands moving slowly as she agreed. You're right. Arthur leaned closer, meeting her gaze directly. This time isn't any different. I don't know how yet, but I will figure this out. I will find a way, just like I always have. We'll get through this. Together. Okay? Her lips formed into a faint smile, small and hesitant, but it was enough to make Arthur feel as though a tiny crack had formed in the suffocating storm of despair. A knock broke the silence, and the doctor re-entered the room. His expression was professional but softened slightly as he glanced between the siblings. Before the doctor could speak, Arthur met his gaze head-on. What are our options? Arthur asked firmly, his tone unwavering. The doctor paused, his eyes widening slightly. He hadn't expected such determination from someone so young. For a moment, he studied Arthur, noting the fierce look in his eyes, the kind of determination that only came from someone who had been through far too much for his age. How could a kid this young have such a strong will? The doctor thought. Then his gaze shifted to Arthur's hand once again, where the beta player's ring rested snugly on his finger. His thoughts clicked into place. Right. I forgot he was a beta player. That explains it. He must have seen and felt things that forced him to grow up fast. I can tell he had a hard life growing up. It's no wonder his will is unyielding. Clearing his throat, the doctor spoke with measured care. The options you have are as follows, he began. There are treatments we can administer to delay the progression of the cancer. However, I want to be clear, these treatments will not cure her. They'll only buy time. All we can do is buy time until a new treatment comes out, hopefully. Arthur nodded, his expression stoic. Charlotte's eyes darted between the two of them, her hand tightening slightly on his. The doctor continued. The first option is a more affordable treatment. It will cost approximately $1,000 per week, and it may delay the progression for about 2 months. It's not extensive, but you can start with that treatment at the beginning if money isn't available. Arthur's brows furrowed slightly, but he waited for the doctor to go on. The second option is significantly more expensive, the doctor said, glancing at Charlotte for a moment before continuing. It's a cutting-edge treatment that would cost $20,000 per week. With this, we could delay the progression up to 6 months, but it requires intensive care and consistent monitoring. The doctor went on to describe the procedures in medical detail, explaining how the treatments would work to slow the spread of the disease, the tests that would need to be conducted regularly, and the side effects Charlotte might experience. Arthur's face betrayed a flicker of shock at the sheer cost, but he quickly hid it under a veil of nonchalance. He could feel Charlotte's gaze on him, her big eyes searching his face for answers. He knew he couldn't let her see his doubt. All right, Arthur said, his voice resolute. We'll do the second one. Charlotte's hand tightened around his, her head shaking vehemently. She lifted her free hand, signing with quick movements. We don't have that kind of money. Don't put yourself into debt for me. Arthur shook his head, gripping her hand tighter as he met her gaze. Don't worry about that, he said softly. Just trust me. Turning to the doctor, Arthur asked, when can we start the treatment? The doctor blinked, taken aback by how quickly Arthur had made his decision. We can start almost immediately, he said after a moment. As long as you pay for the first week up front, we can begin right from early tomorrow. Arthur nodded without hesitation. Where can I pay? The doctor's shock deepened. A kid like this is willing to pay $20,000 up front? It has to be a game. He must be a powerful beta player to make that much money this quickly. He is extraordinary. Chapter 26, Payment. The doctor quickly recovered his composure. Well, you should be able to pay at the reception desk in a few minutes. I'll notify them. Arthur nodded again, his face unreadable but his mind already racing. This is going to cost me everything I've worked for. But it's worth it. The doctor glanced at him once more, a glint in his eyes that was hard to decipher, before leaving the room. As the door clicked shut behind the doctor, Arthur turned back to Charlotte, giving her hand a gentle squeeze, trying to reassure her. I'll be right back, he said softly. I need to take care of the payment. Charlotte's expression remained conflicted, her lips pressing into a tight line, but she didn't try to stop him and nodded. Arthur stood up and slowly walked out of the room, closing the door behind him. In the hallway, he exhaled deeply, steadying himself. This is what I've made so far, he thought, his fingers brushing the edge of the player ring. Her treatment is worth every coin, in fact, it's worth everything. With that thought, he headed toward the reception desk, ready to get Charlotte the treatment needed, no matter the cost. Arthur approached the reception desk, his face calm despite the storm of thoughts in his head. The receptionist looked up, her kind eyes softening as she saw the young man before her. How can I help you? She asked, her tone polite. Arthur gave her a small nod. I need to pay for the treatment for the patient in room 24, he said, keeping his voice steady. Charlotte Fate. The receptionist's expression faltered for a moment, a flicker of hesitation crossing her face. The payment required is $20,000, sir, she said gently, clearly expecting him to buckle at the amount. Her tone held the same sympathy Arthur had encountered from others, the kind that was more of a pity. Arthur didn't waver. Instead, he nodded and reached up to open his player system interface, his fingers moving as he accessed the currency conversion feature. Ding. $20,000 has been transferred to your bank account. The account balance is $21,100.05. Arthur's gaze flicked to the remaining balance in his account. He let out a small sigh. The $1,100.05 left is from the previous exchange of 20 silver coins, he thought. He recalled spending $500 for the diagnostic tests and another $400 to cover 2 days of hospital bills for Charlotte. I'm back to being broke again. The realization hit him hard. He had fought tooth and nail for every coin he'd earned, and now most of it was gone in an instant. He clenched his fists for a moment before relaxing them. It's fine, he told himself. I'll just have to make more money again. Otherwise. He didn't allow the thought to finish, knowing it would only distract him. The receptionist waited patiently, and when Arthur handed over his bank card, she ran it through the POS terminal. The machine processed the payment with a faint beep before displaying the message, "Ding. Payment successful." The receptionist glanced at the screen and offered him a warm smile. "Thank you, sir. The payment has been processed successfully. I hope your family has a speedy recovery." Arthur nodded absent-mindedly, his mind was already elsewhere. 20,000 gone just like that, he thought, his expression hardening. I need to start grinding as soon as possible. This payment is going to be needed every week. Arthur spotted the doctor standing in the hallway, having a conversation with a nurse. He decided to approach him. Spotting Arthur walking towards him, the doctor turned toward him, recognizing him immediately. "Mr. Fate," the doctor said, offering a professional nod. "How can I help you?" Arthur stopped a few feet away, his posture straight. "I just paid the amount for the treatment," he said. "I had a few questions in mind." The doctor adjusted his clipboard slightly and gestured for him to continue. "Go ahead, sir." Arthur hesitated for a brief moment, choosing his words carefully. "I'd like to ask if I can take my sister out today. You mentioned the procedure and its consequences earlier, and I understand she won't have such opportunities going forward. I want to know if taking her out for a while would negatively affect her health." The doctor's face softened as he processed the request. "I see," he said, nodding slowly. "That's a reasonable question." He glanced at the clipboard in his hands before shaking his head. "You can take her out today. The treatment hasn't started yet, it will begin tomorrow. So yes, this is likely the only opportunity for her to enjoy herself without additional strain on her health." Arthur nodded, though a small frown flickered across his face. The doctor's words confirmed the difficult times awaiting. "All right," he said, his voice quieter now. He glanced back at the doctor, deciding to ask something else. "What about me staying in her room?" The doctor raised an eyebrow and then gave a small, approving smile. "Ah yes, that's included in the package. The $20,000 covers a high level of patient comfort, which includes a private room equipped with a convertible guest bed. You're welcome to sleep there. Just inform the nurse when you're ready, and they'll prepare it for you." Arthur nodded again. "All right," the doctor gave a brief nod. "If you have any more questions, don't hesitate to ask." Arthur nodded, then turned and walked back toward Charlotte's room. Chapter 27, Shopping. Arthur stood outside Charlotte's room. Taking a deep breath, he straightened his back and forced a smile onto his face. She needs to see a strong person beside her, no hesitation or fear. He pushed the door open gently and stepped inside to find Charlotte lying on the bed, her gaze on the window. She seemed lost in thought, her eyes following the drifting clouds or perhaps staring beyond them entirely. "Charlotte," Arthur said softly, walking closer. "How are you feeling? Are you tired or anything?" She turned her head to look at him and shook her head slowly, her expression calm but unreadable. Arthur nodded, his smile unwavering. "I just paid the money for your treatment, and the doctor said we'll need to move to a new room now. Are you okay with doing that, or do you want to rest for a while and move later?" Charlotte tilted her head slightly, considering, before letting her feet slip out from under the thin hospital blanket. She stood up carefully, and with a small gesture of her hand, she signed. "Let's go now." Arthur nodded, keeping a smile on his face. "All right, I'll let the nurse know." Arthur spoke with the nurse at the reception desk, who made arrangements to move them. A team arrived shortly after with a wheelchair for Charlotte, but she waved it off, insisting on walking. Arthur stayed by her side, ready to help if she needed it. They were led to another section of the department, one quieter and less crowded. As they approached the door to Charlotte's new room, Arthur's eyes caught the subtle details of the area, the polished floors, the soft lighting, the lack of the constant sound of machinery and footsteps. When the nurse opened the door, Arthur couldn't help but blink in surprise. The room was spacious, far more luxurious than the old room. A large, comfortable hospital bed sat in the center. Beside it, a plush armchair and a convertible guest bed waited, clearly meant for family members. A flat-screen TV hung on the wall opposite the bed, already on a calming nature channel. A small round table near the beds held a basket of fresh fruits. Apples, bananas, oranges, and even a few rare imported ones like dragon fruit, wrapped in transparent plastic and tied with a ribbon. There was even a small counter equipped with a coffee machine and a selection of teas and snacks. That's quite the hospitality, Arthur thought, but then again, it does cost $20,000. The room felt more like a high-end hotel room than a hospital. Arthur glanced at Charlotte. He saw her hand reach for the edge of the hospital bed, her fingers brushing against the smooth, soft linens as if she were testing the quality. "Well," Arthur said, breaking the silence, "this is definitely better than the last room." He chuckled lightly, Trying to lift the mood. They've even got snacks. Fancy ones. Charlotte gave a faint smile, her gaze lingering on the fruit basket for a moment before moving to the window. She didn't say, or sign, anything. But a faint hint of appreciation showed in her expression. Arthur walked over to the guest bed, pressing on it lightly. Not bad, he said to himself. I guess this is my spot now. He turned to Charlotte, his tone more serious. If you need anything, just let me know. This place seems like it's got everything. Charlotte nodded slowly, sitting down on the edge of her new bed. She looked out the window again, her hands resting in her lap. Arthur sat down on the guest bed, watching her quietly for a moment. Time slowly passed by with neither of them speaking. After some time, Arthur finally stopped hesitating. Leaning forward, he finally broke the silence. Hey, he said softly, drawing her attention. I'd like to take you somewhere. Charlotte turned her head, her brows lifting slightly in curiosity. She signed quickly, where? Arthur grinned, a playful glint in his eyes. That's a secret, he said with a light chuckle. Charlotte blinked at him before nodding slightly, a small smile on her face. She lifted her hands again, signing slowly. All right. But I need to go to the toilet first. Arthur nodded, standing. Sure. I'll wait for you. After Charlotte returned, Arthur took her hand gently and led her out of the hospital. Their first stop was a nearby clothing store that was nearby. Stepping inside, Arthur looked around, already forming a plan in his mind. He turned to Charlotte with a grin. All right, he said. Do you want me to choose for you, or do you want to pick? Charlotte met his gaze, then pointed at him without hesitation. All right, I'll choose, he said, smiling confidently. He started walking through the aisles, his eyes scanning the racks with focus. First, he picked out a North Face jacket, a durable and well-insulated coat perfect for keeping her warm. This one will protect you from the cold, he said, holding it up for her approval. Charlotte tilted her head slightly but nodded, trusting his choice. Next, he grabbed 3 packs of winter socks, their soft, thick material designed for ultimate warmth. These are a must, he said, placing them in the shopping basket. They moved to the undergarments section, where Arthur awkwardly gestured for her to choose. Charlotte rolled her eyes slightly, a faint smirk playing on her lips as she selected a few items. Arthur quickly grabbed the basket again, moving to the next section. In the pajama section, he found a set of comfortable, fleece-lined pajamas for colder nights. These are perfect for staying cozy, he said, adding them to the growing pile. When they had finished, Arthur saw the worried look in Charlotte's eyes as she glanced at the items in the basket. She lifted her hands hesitantly. Isn't this too much? I feel like I'm being a burden. Don't ever think like that again, you are my only family in this world. Everything I do is for both of us, money is nothing. Besides. Arthur crouched slightly, leaning close to her ear. Don't worry, he whispered, his voice light but firm. Your brother is a top player. I've made lots of money in the game. Chapter 28, Surprise. Arthur crouched slightly, leaning close to her ear. Don't worry, he whispered, his voice light but firm. Your brother is a top player. I've made lots of money in the game. Her eyes widened slightly at his words, her ear twitching at the tickle of his breath. She nodded hesitantly, though her worry didn't completely disappear. At the cashier, the attendant pulled up the items, her hands moving quickly as the total cost was displayed on the screen with all the items they purchased. Sir, that will be $450.05, she said, looking up with a professional smile. Would you like to pay in cash or card? Card, Arthur said confidently, pulling out his bank card. He inserted it into the reader and waited. Ding. Payment successful, thank you for shopping at our store, the cashier said cheerfully. Drop by again later. Arthur nodded, taking the bag of items and turning to Charlotte with a satisfied grin. All right, let's get going, he said. She gave him a faint smile, her hands clutching his tightly as they headed out of the store. Arthur walked down the street, heading towards the hospital with Charlotte. His eyes caught sight of a store Gigamobile Electronics. Used smartphones at unbeatable prices were displayed on the window. He paused and gestured toward the door. Let's check this out, he said, leading Charlotte inside. Arthur approached the counter, and a salesperson greeted him politely. Hi, I'm looking for a cheap smartphone, Arthur said, his tone casual but direct. The salesperson nodded, pulling out a box containing a used Apple VI. This is one of our budget options. It's not new, but it's in great working condition. Perfect for basic use. Arthur inspected the phone briefly. It wasn't fancy, but it would do the job. I'll take 2 of these, he said. That'll be $200 total, the salesperson said. Do you need SIM cards as well? Arthur nodded. Yeah, and top them up, please. The salesperson added 2 prepaid SIM cards to the bill and activated them on the spot. The total is $250 now, sir. Arthur handed over his card, the transaction processing quickly. Ding. Payment successful. He slipped the phones into the bag and turned to Charlotte. Alright, let's head back. Returning to the hospital, Arthur handed Charlotte the bag with her new clothes and said with a grin, try these on. I want to see how they look. Charlotte tilted her head, signing, now. Yes, now, he insisted, pointing to the hospital bathroom. With a small sigh, she rolled her eyes but took the bag and headed into the bathroom. Arthur took the opportunity to set up his phone, inserting the SIM card and downloading a few essential apps, including a rideshare app. When Charlotte returned, Arthur froze. She stood in the doorway wearing the North Face jacket, a soft scarf wrapped snugly around her neck, and the fitted clothes he'd picked out for her. Despite the effect of her illness, her calm demeanor and the way the jacket framed her slight figure gave her a fairy-like beauty that descended onto modern Earth. Beautiful, Arthur muttered under his breath, the word escaping before he could stop it. Charlotte raised an eyebrow, then rolled her eyes playfully, signing, stop being silly. Arthur chuckled but quickly moved to block her as she turned to head back to the bathroom to change back. Where do you think you're going? He said, grabbing her hand gently. We're not done yet. She blinked at him, her expression curious but patient. Arthur grinned and nodded toward the door. Come on. I've got another surprise for you. Arthur led Charlotte outside, stopping by the curb. He tapped away on his phone for a minute, then pocketed it and stood next to her. Charlotte glanced at him, then at the road, where a car pulled up and stopped right in front of them. Her brows furrowed, and she looked at him again, her eyes clearly asking, what's going on? Arthur smirked and nodded. Yep, it's for us. I ordered it. He opened the car door, gesturing for her to get in. Charlotte hesitated for a moment, then stepped inside, her gaze darting around the interior of the Uber. Arthur climbed in after her and gave the driver their destination. It's a bit far, he said with a grin, glancing at Charlotte, but trust me, it'll be worth it. Charlotte gave him a small smile, leaning on his shoulder as the car began to move. Whatever Arthur had planned, she knew better than to argue. It was his way of showing her that even in the darkest times, there was still room for light. The Uber driver drove them for around 45 minutes before he came to a stop in front of a large sign. Stepping out of the car, Arthur's hands were glued to Charlotte's. Looking at her face by his side, he smiled. So, what do you think about the surprise? He smirked, as he watched her face beam slightly. Chapter 29, Winter Wonderland. Looking at her expression, spoke volumes. She didn't need to utter or signal a single thing for him to understand, she was happy. Winter Wonderland. Beside him, Charlotte's gaze lingered on the sign, her expression momentarily distant. She lifted her hands to signal, Arthur, you remembered. Arthur smiled, squeezing her hand gently. Of course, I remembered, he said, his voice warm. This was the place that Charlotte had wanted to come to long ago, back when their world was different, before the accident that took their parents before. Everything fell apart. Charlotte's gaze softened, but Arthur quickly shifted the conversation, not wanting her thoughts to wander into the dark shadows of their past. He grabbed her hand with both of his and tugged her forward. Come on, let's see the wonders of this place. He said, his tone cheerful. Charlotte's scarf covered her mouth. Arthur did not notice the crinkle at the edges of her eyes, it was a genuine smile. Had he seen her whole face, it might have stolen his breath. It wasn't just any smile, it was real, the kind of smile he hadn't seen in years. But her expression quickly disappeared into her usual calmness as he pulled her toward the entrance. As they stepped into the heart of Winter Wonderland, bright lights circled above rows of painted horses and other fantastical creatures as a tune played out. Arthur turned to Charlotte with a grin. What do you think? A little nostalgia to start things off? Charlotte looked at the spinning carousel and signed, I've never ridden one before. Well, today's your chance. Arthur exclaimed, already leading her to the ticket booth. Moments later, they stepped onto the platform, and Arthur helped her onto a gleaming white horse adorned with gold detailing. He chose a dragon next to her, its wings spread wide. Only if I got a primordial dragon instead of that lazy cat, I would have probably finished the game by now, he thought with a wry smile, as he remembered Neko's lazy and arrogant attitude. Well, I can't be completely ungrateful, she did save me from Sunless. Even though it was by mistake. As the ride started, Charlotte's usual calmness melted away for a moment, her eyes lighting up as the carousel gently spun. Arthur leaned toward her. Not bad, right? He teased, holding on to the dragon's neck. Charlotte rolled her eyes playfully, her hands gripping the pole tightly as the horse rose and fell in a smooth rhythm. She signed at him mid-spin, you look ridiculous on that dragon. Arthur laughed loudly, his voice mingling with the soft music. Ridiculous? You're just jealous mine has wings. The sight of her holding back laughter made him grin wider. That was fun, Arthur said, as they left the carousel and walked around some more to find their next ride. After a few more stalls, Arthur spotted something. Smirking as if he had an evil plan, he pointed at it and told Charlotte. Charlotte's gaze followed his signal, and she signed, "You're kidding. This roller coaster looks scary." Arthur smirked. "Nope. Let's do it." Charlotte hesitated, looking at the ride, but Arthur nudged her shoulder gently. "You trust me, right?" With a faint sigh, she nodded, allowing him to lead her into the line. Soon, they were seated, the harness snug against their chests as the ride started. Arthur could feel her tense beside him, her fingers gripping the edges of the seat. "Don't worry," he said, feeling slightly upset that he made her this worried. "That'll be over before you know it. I shouldn't have made her this scared. What if this ride makes her health worse? Damn it, I should have been more careful." The car ascended slowly, the clicking sound of the chain lifting them higher and higher. Arthur glanced at Charlotte, her eyes wide as she stared at the view ahead. "Hey, it's just a big slide," he joked, trying to ease her mood. "You like slides, don't you?" Her glare was enough of an answer. The drop hit suddenly, the cart plummeting down the first hill. Arthur let out a whoop, the wind whipping through his hair. He glanced at Charlotte and saw her gripping the harness, her expression frozen in surprise before it shifted into something unexpected, a wide, unrestrained laugh. The ride twisted and turned, flipping their stomachs and sending their hearts racing. By the time the ride screeched to a halt, Charlotte was shaking her head with disbelief, but there was a brightness in her eyes that hadn't been there before. Arthur felt somewhat better as he looked at her as they stepped off. "Not bad, huh?" Charlotte signed, "You're insane." Their final ride of the evening was the Ferris wheel. As the wheel began to lift them high above the park, Arthur leaned back in his seat, letting out a deep breath. "This is nice," he said softly, looking out at the twinkling lights below. Charlotte nodded, her gaze fixed on the cityscape that slowly moved further from them. The two of them were lost in their own thoughts. Arthur glanced at Charlotte, noticing the way the soft light of the moon highlighted her pale features. "Charlotte," he said suddenly, his voice low. She turned to him, her eyes questioning. "Thanks for trusting me today. I've enjoyed today a lot, and I really hope we will be able to enjoy ourselves like this in the future." She gave him a small smile and signed, "Thank you." After stepping off the Ferris wheel, Arthur led Charlotte towards some food stalls. The stalls were live with activity, selling everything from hot chocolate to steaming bowls of soup. Arthur paused, turning to Charlotte with a grin. "All right," he said, gesturing to the stalls. "Your turn to pick. Something tasty but healthy, okay? I know what you're like when you see sweets." Charlotte raised an eyebrow at him, a faint hint of mischief in her eyes as she scanned the different vendors. Her gaze stopped on a stall advertising crepes. The vendor was folding paper-thin crepes around fresh fruits and light yogurt. Arthur nodded approvingly. "Seems like a good choice." At the stall, Charlotte pointed at a crepe filled with sliced strawberries, blueberries, and a drizzle of honey. The vendor added a dollop of whipped Greek yogurt on top, creating a balance of sweetness and healthiness that satisfied them both. When it was ready, Arthur handed the vendor a few bills and turned back to Charlotte. "Looks amazing," he said, his tone slightly envious. "I should have gotten one for myself." "Let me go back and get one real quick," he said, but was quickly stopped as Charlotte held his hand, stopping him. Charlotte smiled behind her scarf and handed him a piece with her fork, her expression teasing as if saying, "Don't complain, we can share this." Taking a bite, Arthur's eyes widened. "This is so good," he said, his mouth still full. Charlotte nodded, taking her own small bites. They sat on a nearby bench, sharing the crepe and watching the winter wonderland lights twinkle around them. Arthur enjoyed the moments fully with Charlotte, knowing that what was coming was going to be tough and he needed to be strong to not crack under the pressure. Chapter 30, The Drunk Man returning to the hospital room after their evening out, Arthur slowly pulled out the guest bed provided for family members and sat down on it. "This bed is quite comfortable. Well, anything is better than cardboard, I guess." Charlotte moved toward the hangers on the back of the door, removing her jacket and scarf. She hung the clothes neatly before turning back toward him, her pale face tranquil. With a small gesture, she signed, "I'm tired. I'm going to sleep. Good night, Arthur." Arthur nodded, offering her a soft smile. "Good night, Charlotte," he replied, his tone warm. "I'll stay awake for a bit. I need to fix a few things on my phone." Charlotte nodded, as she climbed into her bed. She tucked herself under the blanket, her small, fragile frame almost disappearing beneath it. Arthur focused on his phone, updating a few apps and skimming through some update notifications. The room was peaceful, with the sound of their breathing the only breaker to the silence. Time passed quietly, and as Arthur adjusted his phone brightness, he felt a slight touch against his hand. Looking down, he noticed Charlotte's hand touching his, her delicate, long fingers brushing against his slightly. Their beds were close together, which allowed the contact. He glanced at her, but her face was turned away to the other side, her breathing even and steady as though she had already fallen asleep. A faint smile tugged at Arthur's lips as he gently held her hand, enclosing it in his own. Her fingers were cold, and he warmed them as he rested back against his bed frame. This girl, he thought. The realization softened him, filling him with warmth as he held her hands softly but tightly. Charlotte's lips curved into a small smile as she drifted deeper into sleep, though Arthur couldn't see it. She seemed at peace, her hand remaining loosely in his as her breathing deepened. An hour later, Arthur noticed the rhythm of her breathing hadn't changed for a while. She's asleep now, he thought. Carefully, he released her hand, placing it softly back on her bed. He stood up slowly, his movements careful not to disturb her rest. Walking to the window, Arthur stared out at the city lights. I can't just sit here and do nothing, he thought, his fists clenching at his sides. Her treatment, the future. I need to make more money, and fast. With a determined expression and unshakable resolve, he entered Armageddon. He smiled, feeling the familiar pull into the void as the real world faded around him, and he reappeared in the vast, unpredictable world of Armageddon. Looking around him, the village was still bustling with players who were either trying to flirt with female NPCs or other female players. What are these idiots doing? How can you possibly waste your time doing this shit, when this world is so unpredictable? Like, this isn't just a random game. Its origins are unknown, and the creators are also unknown. Some of these guys are way too thirsty, he thought with a sigh. Horny for missions and just about anything that walks and has a hole. Lost in thought, he suddenly felt a small weight land on his right shoulder, startling him. His heart jumped as he quickly turned his head, only to find Neko perched there, her tail curling lazily around his neck. Neko, you scared the shit out of me. At least meow or something, don't just jump on my shoulder, he said, shaking his head. Neko, as expected, completely ignored him. Instead, she rubbed her ears with her paw, her face the epitome of indifference. Arthur shook his head. Figures, he muttered, continuing his walk. As he wandered deeper into the village, Arthur passed by a small but familiar run-down house. A familiar figure caught his eye. It was a drunk old man sitting slouched against the wall, a bottle in his hand. Arthur recognized him immediately. It's that guy from before, he thought. The one who said he didn't need help. The old man seemed oblivious to Arthur at first, lazily sipping from his bottle. But as Arthur passed, the man's gaze shifted to his shoulder, locking onto Neko. His blurry eyes squinted slightly, and for a moment, his entire personality changed. The man's body stiffened, his drunken stupor fading instantly. His eyes widened as they met Neko's calm, golden gaze. His hand trembled, and he nearly dropped the bottle as fear crept onto his face. That beast, he thought, his mind racing. How the hell is this kid walking around with that thing on his shoulder like it's a normal cat? Neko continued to stare back at him, her gaze unwavering and unreadable. The old man swallowed hard, the bottle slipping from his hand and clattering to the ground. The sound snapped him out of his daze, and a sudden idea struck him. Maybe he can actually help me, he thought, standing up with surprising speed for a supposed drunkard. The drunken wobble was gone from his step almost as if it never existed in the first place. Arthur frowned as the old man approached him, a wide smile plastered across his face. Hello, young man, the old man began, his voice unusually cheerful. How are you doing today? I heard you're an amazing adventurer. I was wondering if... Arthur raised an eyebrow and cut him off mid-sentence. Wait a damn second, he said, his tone skeptical. Aren't you the same guy who told me he didn't need any help? You were pretty sure about that, too. You made me waste minutes that I could have been using to level up. What do you want now? The old man froze, his smile faltering. For a moment, he simply blinked at Arthur, his mind scrambling for a response. What the hell? He thought, his panic rising. Aren't players supposed to be desperate for quests? Why is this one rejecting me? Arthur tilted his head, his expression deadpan. Well? He asked. What's changed? Or are you just here to waste my time again? The old man's lips parted, but no words came out at first. He scratched the back of his head awkwardly, his confidence wavering. How am I supposed to explain this? Finally, he cleared his throat and forced another smile. Ahem. Well, young man, he said, his tone overly formal, almost bootlicking, I may have underestimated you before. But I can clearly see now that you're someone special.